Looking for a place to finally call home? At Tupelo Home Center, we make it easy. From finding the perfect home to making financing a breeze, we'll take care of everything. Your new home is closer than you think. Pre-qualify today at TupeloHomeCenter.com.
At Room to Room, our Labor Day sale is the real deal.
Half off prices plus an extra 10% off furniture, motion, and mattresses. Snag 20% off accessories plus 48 months special financing. Style your space and save big.
Only at Room to Room.
Mississippi's trusted weather experts. This is Mississippi Live Weather at 6.
Welcome into Mississippi Live Weather at 6. I'm Chief Meteorologist Matt Lawpon. We've had some severe thunderstorms producing sporadic wind damage this afternoon. The storms have weakened or honestly have largely moved out of the area. I think additional thunderstorms could form later on this evening, but we've probably taken the prime punch that this system is going to end up giving us. Headlines this evening, kind of revolve around the fact that we'll still have, I think, some additional thunderstorms. But as you can see kind of in the background, that shot behind at least some of our cameras there, it's a mix of sun and clouds and doesn't look anything like it did earlier. I think we're feeling better toward the weekend, ultimately because we're going to be less humid heading toward the weekend as well, as we're looking at drier conditions ahead for that. And we're also looking ahead for Mississippi Live News with our Emily Leonard, who's been tracking in some of the damage reports that have come in today so far.
Most of the damage reports that we've been getting have been not this. It has been out of Lowndes County, most trees down, and some power outages. So that's where we have been with that. We'll talk about the Tupelo budget coming up a little bit later on tonight, though. Matt?
Okay, appreciate that. Again, coming up with Mississippi Live News, come up here in a couple minutes as we're looking at the latest toward that. Our forecast, again, continues to have showers and thunderstorms out there next couple of hours as we expect the coverage of overall damaging storms to be more limited. There's still some strong storms out in the Arkansas that eventually could roll in later on this evening. A bit of a question as to how great a quantity we will have with that. And if you look behind our meteorologist, Gabe Maynor, one of the things that he is tracking in our downtown Tupelo studios, again, some of the damage pictures that you have sent in. Tree damage so far has been the most significant impact that some folks have seen, right?
Yeah, and we're starting to get more of those reports heading into the 6 o'clock hour as storms are moving on out and folks are starting those repair efforts. And as you can see here, this is along County Road 300 in Shannon. So one of the first thunderstorms that started to become up to severe standards. This is a look at one of those large tree branches snapped there at the base, and appreciate the folks there. I believe, let me make sure I have the right name on this picture. But either way, you can see that some of those trees are going to be on the damaging side. Anna Grace sending in that photo. And we also had this photo sent in from Les. This is over by Brooksville, where it was one of the last severe thunderstorms that we had. And what you're seeing here, it looks like it is not updating there behind me, but I guess we'll show it for you here in just a few moments. You're getting a look at some of the power lines that are knocked over, Matt, and a pretty good amount. Yeah, there you go. So some of the power lines that are knocked over there right along County Road 388 in Brooksville. This will be just east of Brooksville, right there in Noxubee County. So several reports across North Mississippi, but not a ton, and that's what we're grateful for heading into the 6 o'clock hour.
Absolutely. You mentioned Noxubee County. Between the time we talked to her a moment ago and now, the emergency manager down in Noxubee County reaching out to our Emily Leonard, who has some more information coming from there.
Right. Jarvis Board was able to get back to me about some damage in Noxubee County, and he says at this point there is a tree reported on a storage building. He just texted right now and said that several power outages, limbs on the power lines.
Okay, keep trying to get that background behind you changed there. So limbs on power lines, I think that's what Gabe was reporting a moment ago there. Have you reached out to any other folks out there as well that you were kind of waiting on information from?
I did hear from Tori Williams in Clay County. They've had report of a couple trees down and a few power outages as well. I know you guys will get to the power outages coming up in a few minutes, just an update on that, because we've had sporadic power outages, because as soon as these trees fall down one line, you've got power outages. So reached out to them. Cindy Lawrence saying power outage at Lake Lowndes Road in New Hope. We've also had messages on social media about that one as well. As soon as I hear anything else, guys, I will definitely pass that along. If you do have any reports, you can also send it to us as well by using the app. That's always helpful, especially if you have a picture.
Okay, appreciate that. Emily Leonard, again, reporting for us in our downtown Tupelo studios. We are tracking a severe thunderstorm warning that's been issued for some sections here of, this would be, again, locations in Kemper and Lauderdale counties in effect until 7 p.m. The DeKalb area there, with those storms sort of moving through. Let's put this into motion here, give us a 1 hour loop on that line of thunderstorms there. Perhaps some spotty wind damage possibility here. You know, it's far enough away from the radar. We're not going to have the same kind of alignment that we had up in Lowndes, southern Monroe County, was very obvious. Now we're far enough away here. You could see the wind coming out of it, but we have to kind of guesstimate more so what it is down closer to the surface. So let's keep it on the current time here and assume this is going to keep going about 25 to 30 miles per hour. And we'll go back over to the rainfall mode where you can kind of see, I think, just as well how this is kind of that kind of big wall of wind and rain and a lot of lightning with that as well. 1,900 strikes over the course of the last hour out of this grouping of thunderstorms. I mean, a lot of that is up here in Carroll County as well, stretching back, not Carroll County, up in Pickens County as well, stretching back into Noxubee and Lowndes counties. But again, there's our track through Moscow, about 609 Electric Mills for folks that live near there at around 611, getting closer to Oak Grove by about 619, and eventually Kemper Springs by about 633 as we clear that off of there. One storm back toward around the Carthage area. Again, we're watching a few of these spotty storms and what they're kind of capable of. Best way to probably do that is kind of check out a couple of our cameras with the North Mississippi Storm Chasers so that we do have there looking towards some of those thunderstorms. Some rain cool there showing up in Philadelphia. Again, kind of that ring of clouds extending out from where that thunderstorm is at this point in time there. 75 in Philadelphia, and that temperature where it obviously is still about 75 toward Carthage, just kind of a mix of clouds. But there's that one storm that's close by. But again, looking at Mama Justice Doppler radar, that one doesn't have nearly the number of lightning strikes. Going this evening, we're watching a few spotty storms have kind of developed here for locations from Water Valley back toward Charleston and out toward around Clarksdale. These storms remain pretty spotty in nature. Kind of a weak boundary here that these are sort of developing on. You can see these are just starting to get going. Some of our projections have had storms developing. They were a little farther south. I think this is probably a reasonable position, and we expect this quantity of storms. This is kind of our next development zone here. We haven't had much activity. This is going to kind of develop and then progress south and eastward over the next couple of hours. So we do expect additional development and potentially some strong thunderstorms to come from what comes from that additional development here as we go into the evening. We'll bring it back over kind of the sweeping radar version of Mama Justice Doppler radar here. And that shows that, again, more storms are back out there into Arkansas. And this is kind of conjoining with what we have here in Mississippi back to Arkansas, and then obviously the storms that we have in place here very close to our frontal boundary. And so as moisture kind of lifts over top of that, that's one of the things helping to produce these thunderstorms now and will continue to as we go into this evening and into the overnight time period here. So Futurecast, I think, underdoes the quantity of storms we're going to have out here from, say, Calhoun City and Winona, back out to kind of northwest to Kosciuszko. Next couple of hours, it's not going to be, I think, all in Arkansas. I think we'll have more in our area than what that indicates there. Now, one thing I do believe pretty closely, and I think most of the northern portion of the state were fairly worked over here. Pickens County might be a little aggressive on the redevelopment, but a few storms possibly redeveloping overnight. The majority of activity in Arkansas, though, diving southward and staying to our west before additional storms try to develop early for tomorrow and into your Thursday. So Al Bauer forecast has us 20% on that rain coverage early. We show about 10% by 9 a.m. You could have argued on Futurecast maybe a little bit higher than that, but keeping the rain chances more limited than today. High temperatures, lower 90s, and again, that is still running a little bit above our normal, despite the fact tomorrow will be noticeably cooler and a lot cooler, we'll say, by Friday. And even then, we're still 90s, so a lot cooler still relative for this time of the year. Coming up in 60 seconds, we're looking at Mississippi Live News and our Emily Leonard with the latest headlines of the day. You're watching Mississippi Live here at 6.
As a bankruptcy firm, Mitchell, Cunningham, and Bowling realizes many people are worried about their finances. We're here to guide you through the next steps to restart your life with easy video appointments. New clients don't have to leave home to get information about becoming debt-free. Also, convenient in-office appointments are available at the low cost of $340 upfront for a Chapter 13. You can be on your way to being debt-free. Contact Mitchell, Cunningham, and Bowling today or visit our website at mcdebtfree.com. We are here to help you.
Reserve your St. Jude Dream Home giveaway ticket by August 28th, and you'll be eligible to win the house and the bonus prize, a 2026 Polaris Ranger, courtesy of Dream Day Foundation. Visit dreamhome.org or call to reserve your ticket today. Hello, everyone, and good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on Mississippi Live. I'm Emily Leonard. Ward 5 residents in Columbus are fed up with blighted houses in their neighborhood. Residents gathered Monday for a town hall demanding answers on overgrown lots, squatters, and abandoned homes dragging down their property values. Councilman Gary Jefferson says the city is taking it seriously, leaning on improved code enforcement and the city's blight program. It's $1,000 per violation, with fines growing to $1,000 a day if left unfixed. For homes too far gone, the city's $6 million federally funded blight program steps in. So far, it's purchased 22 of the 350 identified properties, with 3 of them demolished. Building Director Nathan Katana says that demolition alone costs the city in between $5,000 and $7,000 per house, more if they find asbestos. This is for my farmers and my ag producers out there. You could be looking at a record-breaking harvest this year. Depends on what you planted, but MSU Extension Specialist Justin Calhoun says soybeans are on track to beat the state's 2023 record thanks to early planting and some timely rainfall. Corn could be setting a record too. Specialist Eric Larson says this is the first year in his career that the farmers planted the entire crop in March. Could be well over 200 bushels per acre. And then don't forget about cotton. Cotton acreage is up too, from about 300,000 acres last year to 360,000 this year. Eupora, your voice is wanted for the future of your town. The next Eupora 2040 Action Circles meeting is set for Thursday, August 27th, that is tomorrow, from 6 to 7:30 at the Eupora Civic Center. Organizers say you don't have to be an expert, and you didn't have to attend the first meeting to go to this one. If you live, work, or raise your family in Eupora, your voice belongs in this room.
Really need you all to come out and be a part of this. Again, we don't create a comprehensive plan that benefits everyone unless everyone's at the table. So I encourage you to come on out to the Civic Center tomorrow night and make sure you've got a voice at the table, that is heard, and that any concerns you have are being addressed as we work through this process. Again, it's going to take all of us to identify our priorities as a community so that we have a good plan and a good roadmap for the next 10 to 15 years. Hope to see y'all there.
Again, that meeting is tomorrow, Thursday at 6:30 at the Eupora Civic Center. Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us here on Mississippi Live. I'm Emily Leonard. Have a great night.
When C.K. Little opened his doors in downtown Corinth nearly 80 years ago, his plan was simple: deliver excellent service and exceed expectations. That's why we say a little gift goes a long way.
Growing up in a farming community, I've always been fascinated with the weather. But in 2024, my draw to be a mother became stronger.
So I took a step back from my job until Matt gave me a call. Mississippi Live allows me to be fully present at home while also getting to do my dream job as a broadcast meteorologist.
Wake up with me every weekday morning on Mississippi Live.
I started banking in 2012, went to First Choice Bank. They gave me my first loan, super easy to deal with. I like First Choice Bank. I've never wanted to go anywhere else. I'm a customer for life.
This portion of Mississippi Live weather is presented by Little's Jewelers.
Right now, from the Mississippi Live Weather Center, here's Mississippi's Chief Meteorologist, Matt Lobhon.
A few spotty storms starting to form in and around locations there in the Clarksdale area. You're watching again Mississippi Live here at 6 o'clock. Appreciate y'all for tuning in with us. At this point here, again, nothing that looks overly strong out of that shot there, nor our location there in Batesville. 96, the temperature feels like 104 in Clarksdale. Batesville, it's 84, feels like 95. So if you get under these, at least there's a little bit of rain cooled air to sort of contend with there out of the strongest of our storms. Looking at Mama Justice Doppler here and our loop, it's really just been the last 30 minutes as it started to kind of light up with some isolated showers here that have kind of popped up and will continue kind of popping up in the next little bit. So don't be shocked if you have some heavy rainfall. We do anticipate that, again, some of these storms could potentially produce a couple damaging wind gusts. This is still in a zone where that remains possible. In fact, our severe risk for today still remains technically a level 2 out of 5. Went all the way there, again, the Mississippi-Alabama state line. And so the expectation is that storms could try to fill in later on this evening and produce some gusty winds. But one thing that we said a lot early, want to make sure we're clear on now, no tornado threat. The only green you see behind me there is because of a severe thunderstorm watch they have out that direction there. As far as wind goes, that's the reason it was issued. And hail, not an impossibility along with that. Get back over to the regular version on Mama Justice Doppler radar here. And our severe thunderstorm continues to slide southward here to DeKalb, back toward Philadelphia. A few storms kind of developing in. A decent number of lightning strikes, 1,200 on this shot here. And checking our True Shield roofing hail swath shows maybe a little bit of that trying to show up. Now, from time to time, we've got these shear markers like that have kind of popped on our map today. That's something that in severe weather we look at like, oh, do we possibly have some rotation? I can see kind of what it's looking at, but the reality is sort of looking at here, I think that's more wind than anything kind of on the leading edge. And we're also way too far away from the radar site to have a good look at any kind of rotation sort of shear. Like when you look this high up, I mean, maybe it has some convergence where that's the case, but that's not what I would say it specializes in. So let's get a storm track on this whole kind of batch of showers and thunderstorms there as those continue to slide through that severe thunderstorm warning, generally speaking toward Meridian and Lauderdale County, of course, in Kemper County now. You see sometimes there, Rio, we're at 619 for you, and back toward around Tamola, about 629, Lauderdale, 633, and Duffy by about 647. Behind this, we have had sporadic reports of wind damage that has occurred with these thunderstorms. That's kind of what these different icons you see here are, including a new report coming in from around the Starkville area of some trees that have kind of fallen in there. Clearly one that's near Aberdeen as well, of near the Lackey Road area of a tree that was downed earlier on today. But the main cluster we have of those damaging wind reports there, all those kind of blue circles in and around the Columbus area. One of many spots where, again, we've had some power outages today. Our meteorologist, Caleb Edelblut, has been in our downtown Tupelo studios. It's one of the things that he has been working on, trying to stay up to date on. Of course, anytime we have damaging wind, we usually have power outages.
Yes, that is the case, Matt. We're taking a look at Union, Oktibbeha, and Winston County coming in most significantly with these outages. In fact, we can start off with Union and Lafayette County still dealing with around 604 people out within this area mark. So still dealing with a significant amount of customers. The good news, that 60 customers we saw just south of Hickory Flat, you guys have been restored with that power. So local EPAs continue to do a fantastic job. But to continue kind of hitting on the spots that have been hit the hardest so far, we're taking a look at the Golden Triangle region with Ford County Electric dealing with quite a few outages all within this region. I mean, taking a look down Highway 12, I mean, 417 just west of Starkville, making its way closer towards the Sturgis community. So definitely significant, and we can see these numbers just continue to pop up all across the Ford County Electric area. And we're also dealing with quite a few outages with our East Mississippi Electric Association. So we're dealing with 583 just north of Meridian where those storms are current, but Winston County continuing to get affected pretty hard with those outages, now up to 629 just northeast of Louisville. You can see 23 just northwest, 5, 4, 1 more isolated outages elsewhere around Winston County. But Matt, unfortunately, still dealing with those outages. Those continue to kind of climb a little bit, but the good news is that storm continues to move further and further south. So EPA is definitely doing a great job, going to get out there and get that power restored very quickly for you guys.
Yeah, hopefully so. And that certainly would make a difference. I know folks love it when that power comes back on, and we appreciate all the folks that have to work so hard to make that happen. Thank you so much, Caleb. We'll talk to Gabe here in a couple minutes about some of the sporadic wind damage reports that you have sent in and other pictures that you've shared with us using the Mississippi Live app. So through the evening, still going to have some spotty showers and thunderstorms out there even beyond midnight tonight. Temperatures middle 70s, probably dropping low 70s by early tomorrow morning. So the question is just how many of these out into Arkansas fully move in? One thing that this does not do a great job of is resolving the storms back here, Batesville to Clarksdale. So when we look at this on Storm Futurecast here, a couple isolated storms still filling in, but it's a little late on when it's doing that. So I expect to have a greater quantity of these by 8 o'clock, probably here closer from Bruce and Grenada back toward Cleveland. Most will not be severe. A couple wind gusts or hailstones possible, I'd say, with those. And then again, the storms in Arkansas trying to slide down toward Greenville, Hollandale, Eudora, and eventually down closer to the Rolling Fork area. Out east, this is maybe a little aggressive on what it's showing for Oktibbeha County. We'll say not impossible there. And as we slide it a little bit wider here for a moment, the strongest of storms again back into Arkansas, diving down south. We do get some redevelopment for early tomorrow morning. See these storms trying to develop by your morning commute. Our meteorologist Maggie McCauley track anything that we have with that, but most again below severe limits. Low temperatures for about low 70s for tomorrow. So we've mixed down some slightly cooler air, and it's slightly less humid as we find ourselves kind of on the north side of this initial frontal boundary. That runs us pretty much right on what we expect for this time of year. Our IMPC school bus forecast, 72 at pickup, 92 at drop-off tomorrow afternoon, and hopefully, obviously, a few less thunderstorms than what we had during the school day today. And there's that school day forecast. Got to get that lunch in there. Everybody loves lunch, right? And again, appreciate our friends at IMPC for sponsoring that forecast. So Thursday, we are mainly dry here, as you can see, 9, 10, 11 o'clock in the morning there, with additional showers and thunderstorms trying to develop south of our front. It's not an everybody thing, and you can see up north here with those northerly winds, that is the drier air that tries to settle in. So a couple isolated storms Thursday afternoon. We'll say 20 to maybe 30% on that coverage there. Highs to 95 in Amory and Tupelo, about 94 degrees in Houston, 95 Greenwood and Belzona. 91 are normal, so running above that, and heat indices still up in excess of 100 degrees. Going into Thursday evening, again, a few rogue storms possible. The blue and the red here indicates a stalled front. You basically have cold air pressing on this from both the north and the south. The result of that is that, one of them's got to win, right? No, actually they don't. They just kind of keep pressing. So we sort of end up on the drier, slightly cooler side into Friday, and that's one of the things that could make it feel cooler, even if temperatures are maybe just marginally cooler. By the way, rain chances don't completely go away. We still have that northwest flow aloft, and that's a few isolated showers possible early Friday morning. We'll say only around 20% on that coverage. Temperatures in the upper 60s, low 70s to begin the day, pretty close to what we would typically expect. So here's, again, Futurecast going through your Friday. A few spotty storms, not much showing up 9 to 10 to 11 o'clock in the morning. Now, we're going to do what we do here, where we flip this over to our strike model. What strike is going to show you is a greater quantity of storms. But look at the main idea. A couple little waves here with some showers and storms. It just has one of those more positioned over top of us. And it clearly has a little more moisture lingering behind this front than necessarily might be the case. So we will expect to have, again, some spotty showers and thunderstorms Friday afternoon. But notice how that wave eats into the fuel, eats southward. And we're looking at 4:30, 5, 6 o'clock. Really hoping our Mississippi Live Game of the Week presented by Casey Lott ends up being a dry one. High temperatures Friday, lower 90s, maybe some mid-90s in the Delta. But look, when you add in the moisture, I mean, even in Clarksdale, which has typically been one of our highest values, coming in 98 versus the actual temperature at 95. Yeah, that difference there tells you that that is at least some very noteworthy improvement. 7-day forecast has us 91 for Friday, 93 for Saturday, as well as Sunday, coming about 94 by Monday of next week. Looking drier into next week, and that means hopefully shifting the pattern away from these storm chances that have kind of plagued us for the last week or so. Still one more day, though, for Thursday, and you could have made a real argument to maybe have 20% on there for Friday, first part of the day. We're still looking for all of our projections to kind of overlap on that, which is something Gabe will be looking at coming up tonight at 9 and 10 o'clock. Okay, give me 60 seconds. We're going to look at your pictures, look in the chat to what you guys have been trying to tell us, make sure we've got all those reports relayed as we're still looking through all of the damage that has occurred. You're watching Mississippi Live here at 6. We'll be right back.
For years, it's been the same formula. If it bleeds, it leads. You deserve better. We are Mississippi Live. We're focused on the stories that matter to you, to your community, to your family, because local matters. We are Mississippi Live.
I have been going to Tupelo Smiles my whole life. When I was a kid, I was unhappy about some uneven coloring on my teeth after getting my braces off, which at the time there really wasn't a fix. I was recently made aware of a solution that would totally fix it, which is exactly what we did. They not only heard my concerns, but they never stopped looking to solve my problem, and that's why I love Tupelo Smiles.
Well, I'm tracking the tropics there. Again, a couple disturbances that we're watching down in there that could have some development, fairly high chances, maybe up 50% or so back there, deeper into the tropics, and another area up into the Atlantic. I'll talk to Gabe about that in more detail here in a minute. Gabe's also looking at those weather pictures that you guys have sent in to us today using the Mississippi Live app.
Yeah, and a lot of those just reports of trees being down. This submitted a little bit earlier on during the afternoon. And of course, like we talked about at the top of the show, additional reports, this one around the Shannon area and then around Brooksville, where some of those tree limbs have fallen down, onto some power lines as well. So we appreciate all of our weather watchers out there in the field giving us these reports. It does look like they are populating in a little bit slowly there, so I apologize for that. But they're all pictures that we've been able to view from you guys out there in the field of the shelf clouds a little bit earlier on, the electric atmosphere, the lightning that took place causing a lot of those sporadic power outages, and of course Amory, where things really started firing off. We got a few shots of the shelf cloud moving through that area. So just some great job by you guys, and even out in Columbus getting a shot of that shelf cloud there just north of Highway 82. So several shots in and around the area that you guys have submitted, and those shots continue to come in, which, speaking of, a new report coming in. Let me make sure I have the information right on this. So this will be in Starkville from Vic. Tree fell on power line in the front yard. And as that kind of works its way into the picture, you can see right there the power line laying on the driveway. I assume that's the driveway there with the fence there in the background. That's a pretty large tree, or if it's a branch of a tree, pretty large there as well, knocking down some of those branches. And this is the same storm down in Starkville that caused this damage that we're still tracking out there towards Kemper County, moving through our central and southern counties here in North Mississippi. Matt, I know that's what you're taking a deeper look at, but shows the potential that these storms do have.
Yeah, it does show some of the potential that they have. Our meteorologist Gabe Maynor there. In fact, I'm going to switch you places to let you do some tracking there on the chroma wall here for a minute, if you're good with that. Sound good?
I'm rocking with that.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so as we're taking a look at our Mama Justice Doppler radar, something we talked about was that storm there in Kemper County, working its way through the southern part of Kemper County and then off there towards Lauderdale County, around Marion, towards the Lockhart community, and then further south into Bailey. So while I pull up things here behind the scenes, there you're getting a view of that warning, kind of adjusting that into the 7 o'clock hour, and current time 6:30, so we still have a little bit of time on this warning, and it still remains at some decent wind speeds. I mean, right there where we're getting those brighter reds right along Highway 45, we can see that towards Scuba, and then working its way south into the Meridian area, so we are going to be watching that. Now, I'm just looking at some of the wind out here on the southwestern flank of this storm. It doesn't look as impressive there as really that leading edge that we're looking at along 45. So that's the part that I want to track out. Now, we're going to track out the entire thing, but I would say the eastern part of this is the one to keep an eye on. Actually, before we do any track, let's get an exact speed on this as it continues that southern movement, because, I mean, these have varied in speed here and there through the afternoon. So as we pull up that tracker, I mean, this is a little fast. 35 miles an hour. This must have gained some speed since we tracked it here in North Mississippi. So as we track that out, we're going to keep it at about 35 to 37 miles an hour and go all across that main base and continue working its way south and with a little bit of an eastern tilt to it. So 37 miles is where we'll take it. You can see the community area. Let me adjust that a little bit to get further down along this warning. So as we clean things up, the Bolagi, that's a new one for me. 633, we see there. Marion 637. The Tum Suba 638. Cuba by 647. Livingston 647. Meridian 647. Lisbon 720. Enterprise 729. Same thing there for Stonewall. So this is going to be our main storm that we are watching. The overall scape of Mississippi shows you that there's not a ton of development. There's just what we have in Arkansas, and then that individual severe thunderstorm out there in Kemper County. So through the 7 o'clock hour, National Weather Service in Jackson keeping that warning issued. But I do want to show you that, that day one risk still includes Arkansas and North Mississippi. So potential for some redevelopment is possible. We've seen it on Futurecast. We're seeing it once again through our Mama Justice Doppler radar with what storms we have in Little Rock. And there's been some pretty large hail signatures out there as well. So we're hopeful that that dies out before the overnight hours. But as we're talking, to take a look at this storm and those storm tops over those last few scans, because what we can see is as these intensify, those storm tops get a little bit higher. I mean, they continue to tell that same story. Let me move it more to where we can see that. So we're tracking this into Lauderdale County. Yeah, east side of the storm along 45. This is over Lauderdale now. That's some pretty gusty winds. I want to see, in regards to distance from the radar site, we're looking a bit of a ways away. I think we need to swap this over to our Jackson site at this point. While it is still a bit of a ways away, it's a better view than all the way up there in Monroe County, where it's detecting way high aloft into the atmosphere. So right there towards Lauderdale, Lockhart, winds continue to be breezy. I'm not overly concerned with what I'm seeing there. Yeah, and Akron looks like that has collapsed. Another way we're able to see that is with our echo tops. Let's do some surface analysis here. Yes, we're at 55,000 feet, still maintaining that. Might be a scan behind there towards Scuba. That's where we were seeing those wind gusts kind of peak right there towards Scuba, and now falling apart as it's moving further south and east. So I think that's a scan behind, and that'll show a better view on our storm tops there as it moves through Kemper County and then continues into Lauderdale County. Now that warning is in place until 7 o'clock. It is moving faster than what this warning is showing. So as we put it back on reflectivity, I want to show you that leading edge already on the southern fringes of the severe thunderstorm warning. So Jackson is going to have to decide if they're going to extend this or go ahead and expire it here in the next few moments, because 634, this is not going to last 26 minutes within that polygon, or within that warning, I should say. So as we track that out, that'll be something to monitor for, and I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. So they're continuing it through the 7 o'clock hour for Kemper and Lauderdale counties. Okay, well, there you go. Answer right at the cue. So as we're looking at this, towards Tamola, that's got some decent height to it as well. I want to see wind over in that area. Wind's not overly impressive, but our True Shield Roofing hail swath trying to hint at some possible hail, but overall, I'm not concerned with that, at least not just yet. We'll watch that over the next few scans and see how that transitions. One of the things that we are seeing is within this storm, I was trying to get a view on that boundary. Yeah, so right here, it's behind my head, of course, but as we watch these storms develop in Neshoba County, watch how they fire off along that boundary, kind of feed into the cluster that we have in Kemper and now Lauderdale County. So this boundary being far away from these storms, it's going to limit just how much these storms do strengthen. So I'm not overly concerned with what we have in northeast Neshoba County. Still a good bit of lightning, but I'm not looking at that overly concerned. I'm really focused more towards the Kemper and Lauderdale County storm. But even then, if you look at this boundary, it is still feeding into that leading edge. Just watch how it kind of rounds off there, working its way into Marion. So this is going to be maintained along I-20. So folks traveling, we've been talking about that all evening as well. If you're traveling through the I-20 area around Meridian, please drive with caution. Or if you, better yet, want to get off the road and go get some gas, go get maybe a drink or a snack to enjoy as you watch these storms pass on by. We just don't need to be on the roadways tracking this out, because it's going to cause a pretty hectic commute, all things considered. Power is getting restored in the area as well, Caleb. If you want to pull up some power outages across the region, I think some folks would enjoy some good news heading through the night. Huge wind in Alligator, raining sideways, and lots of lightning. That's what Terry's reporting to us here in the chat. And any reports that you have, send those in through the Mississippi Live chat as well. But that's basically what we've been dealing with. Wind, rain, and lots of lightning. And that's been causing some significant impacts across the region. So pulling this back up full screen as we track this out further towards the south and east. This is eventually going to make its way into Alabama as well. We're right on the state line. Wind towards Tomola, where we had some of those elevated storm tops, you might see a re-intensification of that wind. I do want to pull up our echo tops here, see if that has updated on the latest scan. Looks like it is still about a scan behind there towards Scuba. I just want to see if this is a collapsing storm at this point, because that might also put out some of those strong winds. Caleb, while we wait on this, I think that it's a perfect time to take a look at power outages and what you've been assessing here behind the scenes, and some good news for some folks heading into the evening.
Yeah, no, let's continue taking a look at that. I'd say good news is we're not seeing more color spread on our power outage map here across North Mississippi, but unfortunately, kind of the flip side of that, we're still dealing with that constant outages out there for Union, Oktibbeha, Winston County. We are going to start to see these counties further on south in our coverage area, reaching max south broadband coverage, start to see those continue to climb, and we'll just start off right here in northeast, or excuse me, not northeast Mississippi. Let me move this one down. We'll start off with our East Mississippi EPA. We'll go back towards northeast because that's definitely a good sign. But we're dealing with significant outages out there, pretty much between Philadelphia, Scuba, and Meridian, just dealing with all of those. I mean, you can see 583, 258, 205, 29, 36, 29, 737 just north of Meridian. So unfortunately, power outages will continue to climb with that severe thunderstorm warning that Gabe was just tracking out. So still dealing with those. But if we went a little bit further north out here towards Winston County, this is out here just outside of Louisville, we're still dealing with 629, then isolated outages elsewhere. And I think we were talking about some just northwest of the city. So those have already been restored, meaning your local EPAs are already out on the scene getting those restored for you guys. Out here with our 4-county electric, still dealing with those, but I will say that these are starting to trim back slightly, especially as these storms are moving on out of the area. It's a lot more, it's definitely safer for those EPAs to get out there and restore your power here within the next few minutes, hours, as those continue to climb back. But this is what I really wanted to point out as far as that good news that our meteorologist Gabe Maynard was talking about. We were talking about Union and Lafayette County dealing with just those constant outages, around 600, pretty much right along the state line between Union and Lafayette, kind of affecting Kiel, Burt, Etta, those communities. And those have been restored. So that was 600 or more customers affected. Now we're dealing with them a little bit more isolated. 1, 2 just outside Poolville, 1 outside of DeLay, and kind of southeast of the Oxford city. So thankfully, customers continue to come back online. That continues to be an excellent thing, Gabe. So we're going to want to expect to see a lot more of that, but we also know that those thunderstorms, they just continue to rumble here in North Mississippi.
Yeah, and we're taking a look at the next development, kind of what you were watching there behind the scenes, talking to me about. You were letting me know there behind the scenes to track it, and rightfully so. While it's not necessarily warned, it is going to be our next development here for North Mississippi, and we're seeing this cyclical development that we're getting within these storms in far northwest Mississippi. I saw Terry there in the chat talking about the Alligator community. Well, I mean, there's Alligator right over my head along Highway 61, this in far northwest Mississippi. But watch how this kind of moved through the Alligator area. And look at the storm tops, well, not just storm tops, but the potential hail as it moved through the area right across the state line. Whenever we get those blacks, and we saw it towards Sessions Landing, that's where we're talking about some large hail potentially falling out of this. And even towards Alligator, well, the hail core wasn't overly pronounced. Now, don't get me wrong, it was a downpour. It wasn't overly pronounced. We are getting moments where we're starting to get in the higher end of our reflectivity, basically meaning that we're getting higher storm tops and that hail potential is climbing. I do want to take this 3D here real quick, but before I get there, I want to say that we have several different boundaries that these are developing across. Towards DeWiggins, we're also getting a look at maybe some small hail or maybe even some large hail trying to form there. So we are going to have to monitor that along Highway 3 at the intersection of Highway 3 and Highway 8 towards Ruleville, the Drew community, and out there towards Minter City a little bit later on. Now, this is developing right overhead, so not exactly going to get a good development or at least a good movement on this. Let me real quick take this 3D mode and then we're going to try to track this out, and then we'll go back down south to our severe thunderstorm warning. First thing we're going to look at within our 3D mode are the storm tops. And yeah, they're just real cyclical in nature. These are not going to see anything that is overly high for a long period of time. These are going to build and then collapse and then build and then collapse and basically go up and down, falling apart and redeveloping for several different times. I'm going to cut into this storm, as we do typically with these types of storms, looking for some of that hail. And I'm going to try to look for those purples, not just purples, I'm going to try to look for the whites. So let me cut into this a little bit more. So right there, you're getting some of those whites aloft, and even towards Alligator, a little bit of that as well. Terry, I'm curious, if you have any reports of hail, let us know down in the chat, because that'll give us a basis to kind of gauge these this 3D mode, but also gauge these storms off of through the rest of our evening, because towards Drew, out there towards the Blue Lake area, we're watching for some potential development there for some small hail. So if you can let us know what you saw, then by all means send that over, and we'll appreciate that very much. Bringing it back to our regular version of our Mama Justice Doppler radar, tracking this out. Hang on one second. Okay. I see something that might happen. So towards Tutwiler, and I believe someone was just asking there in the chat, or Tilatoba, sorry, I got my T-towns mixed up. We'll check that in just a moment. What do you see? You see a development here along Drew. It's starting to move more towards the east-northeast, while all of these storms that are already pretty intense are moving southeast. These are going to feed into that main storm right there, and this is going to be a brief intensification right there towards the Tutwiler community and Webb. That's where I would not be shocked at all if we're getting some pretty decent hail reports here over the next few moments. So tracking that out, and let me get a speed on these, as these are a new development, so we need to make sure that we update that. And these have started from nothing and started to build into something a little bit more pronounced. So getting a speed on this, not going to be as fast as our storms down south. We're about 16 to 17 miles an hour. And I'm going to drag out this specific storm because while there is development further south, whenever those merge together, that's where I think we're talking about some large hail potential. So Tutwiler 647, that's here in the next 4 minutes or so. Rome 653, Parchman by 657, and Minot there 655. Sumner 703. Fitzhugh, I'm so sorry if I mispronounced that, 709, Blue Lake 710, Webb 711, Sharkey by 731, and Whitehead by 740. This is not expected to get that long. When you look down the way that this could potentially be heading your direction. Again, there's additional development. You're going to hear those rumbles of thunder in advance of those times, but the one storm that I'm watching in particular out there towards Tutwiler, that's the one I feel like we need to keep on our radar in a literal and figurative sense throughout the afternoon, or throughout the, I guess we're in the evening now, so throughout the evening. Storm top still at 55,000 feet, so decently tall on that one. So that'll be one to monitor. I want to go back down south because we do still have this severe thunderstorm warning in effect for parts of now Lauderdale County. We're transitioning over the state line towards York, Alabama. So this is going to be a little bit outside of our coverage area, but at least carrying it through that 7 o'clock warning, which is here in the next 16 minutes or so. So we'll be tracking that out together. Now let's look at those wind speeds because that was the main concern out of these. And even towards Tumola, it seems like that has fallen apart compared to what it was for that brief moment a little bit earlier on. I'm not impressed by this. They might expire this warning before the 7 o'clock hour. Dragging it back, you can see how the wind was way more pronounced towards Wahala and Scuba. Now as we're getting more into the 6:45 hour, this started to become disorganized and doesn't look nearly as impressive. Now, some small hail is possible, but even those, well, Damascus, we are probably talking about some hail. There probably needs to be an extension of that warning out there towards, let's see, is this out towards Kemper County once again? Let me look at the movement on this because, again, this has basically been a seed that has grown into the Kemper County area from out there towards Neshoba County. We're in Cleveland, and not Cleveland, Mississippi over there, northwest Mississippi. It's more towards Damascus and Moscow. And the reason why is catching my attention is that Truesfield Roofing hail swath, whenever we start getting into the dark purples, that's where you see it change from possible to probable. And probable is indicating 1 inch or greater on this storm. So cutting into it, let's see if this hail has even fallen yet, because I think that's a big telltale sign of our concern on this storm over the next few moments. So as we cut into this, yeah, those whites showing up, that's telling me that there's still some decent hail aloft there, just outside of the Damascus community. I want to try to get a little bit more into it as well. So bear with me. Yeah, there you go. That's some large hail. And even over the last couple of minutes, let's see how this has trended. And I'm going to go 15 minutes on this. And we're only going to do a 1 minute lapse increment because we're going to take this scan by scan. Yeah, okay, it has fallen out. So right there a moment ago where you see it peak and then come back down, that's that hail falling out of it. So I think we're talking about some large hail, Matt, out of this. It's not severe warned, but I think we're up to that standard on this storm.
Well, and we did get a 56-mile-per-hour wind gust a couple minutes ago, I guess 6:38, so it's been about 8 minutes ago there at Naval Air Station Meridian, so basically just on the north side of Meridian. So just kind of a heads up, at least that's right at 58 is technically severe thunderstorm wind gust, but that would be a measured wind gust there. So just for some perspective on what the other part of this thunderstorm is producing, but like you said, the biggest of that hail, the damaging winds on that particular part of the thunderstorm could be falling out right now.
Exactly. So we'll go back on that storm and assess the wind gusts because that's why we appreciate the reports because, you know, looking at it on our Mama Justice Doppler radar, sometimes it doesn't look as impressive as what's actually being produced on the ground. So that's why any reports you guys have, send those in. We're monitoring that behind the scenes. And I do see a few questions in there. I also see Terry saying no hail as of yet in Alligator. So that's also a welcome sight. So and that's why we appreciate your reports. It tells us what to expect and what not to expect within these storms. So we're talking 6:38 around Meridian, north side of Meridian. I'll say that does not look impressive. So getting about 58 miles an hour, that means those winds are mixing down to some pretty strong gusts there at the surface. And as we continue through the rest of our evening, let me go ahead and drag this out. Oh, I'll let you take over. $638 on that, right? Is it no audio? I don't think there's audio, Matt.
Can't hear him.
So I saw where you were kind of pointing though, over there towards Kemper Springs and Daleville. Is that around the area that the reporting station is at? Okay, so as we're looking at that specific location, yeah, I mean that's where we got, I would say, the most significant return. But let's talk about what we're seeing aloft. And I'm going to go to the brightest section of this general area. That's telling you the story's not aloft. The story's there at the surface. 17-mile-an-hour winds aloft, mixing down to 58 miles an hour there at the surface. So that tells you that our radar is not going to be detecting this as well as, you know, those reports there on the ground. So we're going to treat this as though the winds are not going to look impressive aloft, but as though they're about 50 miles an hour there at the surface. And that's why the National Weather Service I believe this is still Birmingham out there in Alabama, went ahead and issued a severe thunderstorm warning for Sumter County, is because of that, probably that exact report. While it doesn't look impressive to them, they're probably waiting on some proof in the pudding, as you call it, for those winds as those move through Meridian. So as we look at the winds towards York, again, not impressed, but we're still probably talking about 50 to 60 mile an hour winds mixing down to the surface. And even out there towards Porterville, I see some brighter returns. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything there. Maybe some stronger winds on the back end of this setup. Dove and Millville, that's again towards Alabama. That's where we could be getting some winds about 50 to 60 miles an hour as well. So those continue to work there towards the south and east, now into Alabama. But this warning is set to expire at 7 o'clock there for Lauderdale County. So we are hopeful that our reports stay minimal, but at least confirming that some strong winds moving through Lauderdale County. Before we get too far away, I want to go back up here to our storms there in northwest Mississippi, because I know we have a few viewers asking, well, hey, what about my area? What's going on here? So specifically, let me pull up the chat. I want to make sure I'm not missing anyone. So Terry, appreciate that report once again. Shelby Cam is down, but good view on Cleveland. Look at Cleveland, and fitting that May is asking about, is there anything going to be severe in Cleveland? And what about Batesville? A lot of locations there in northwest Mississippi. Let's get a view out of Cleveland, which this should basically point right into the storm, with the view, with James controlling that behind the scenes. So let's pull up the camera, and let me make sure that we take this full screen. So yeah, there's a look at the shelf cloud kind of moving into the area. This is looking towards the north and east, where those storms are kind of moving into the region, dark clouds, and of course that dark rain base as well. So that's going to bring some heavy downpours and potentially some hail as well. We did get that report there in Alligator saying that there was not confirmed hail there at the ground. So that at least is giving us some hope that maybe this hail is melting before it reaches the surface. But as that storm is moving through the area, you can see where the darkest portions are, right just northeast of Cleveland, where you're getting those purples, and that's where we could be getting some of that hail, some of that wind. Definitely something to monitor. But I appreciate the North Mississippi Storm Chasers for all that they do and for providing that camera network for us here in North Mississippi to stay updated on what's happening. Now, looking at this is a little bit more intense than what it was when it was moving through Alligator. So we may potentially, and let me take it back here real quick, about 30 minutes, drag it back. You can see Alligator there right above my head. Let's see how that trended. Yeah, Alligator not necessarily getting the darkest purples or the blacks that show up. So that's where I think we're talking about some hail trying to reach the ground. I don't necessarily think the National Weather Service is going to pull on a severe thunderstorm warning until we get confirmed reports, because we've seen a large part of these storms have some development to it, have some decent hail signatures. But, you know, talking about that towards Brooks and Drew, we're talking about potentially some large hail out of this. Whenever we get to the probable threshold, similar to what we saw down south, that's where we start getting hail up to 1 inch in diameter, and that's a possibility with this one. Have not gotten confirmed reports, but if you are in the Drew or Brooks community, let us know down there in the chat if you are seeing any hail and how that is verifying there at the surface. I'm going to take this 3D mode because that helps us cut into the storm to get a better view on this. And while, you know, storm top's not showing any much of a change, basically remaining pretty tall, we'll be able to cut into the storm and see what's within those cloud tops. And I think once you start getting into the black there, that's your large hail that is probably falling out of this towards the Fitzhugh community, Brooks, exactly where we tracked just a moment ago as that merged together. So, okay, sweet. Okay. So they went ahead and issued a severe thunderstorm warning because of this large hail that's trying to fall out of here towards the Drew and Brooks community. And I want to put this on a loop because I want to see if this hail has fallen out just yet. So once those merge together right there towards, I believe that was Tutwiler, we're starting to see that hail become more elevated. It doesn't look like this is falling out yet. It still looks elevated and lofted into the air. So just east of Brooks, we're talking about some large hail potentially falling to the ground. And even northeast of Drew, this would be just east of highway, let's see, which highway? Is that Highway 3? Towards the Drew, Fitzhugh, and Blue Lake community are going to get some large hail development as well. So this is going to be one to watch for. National Weather Service, of course, watching it. We have not gotten confirmed reports. Go ahead, Caleb, and look at our chat and look there on the Mississippi Live Weather app and see if we've gotten any pictures out of this storm, because I think that we could be talking about some hail. And that one in Tutwiler, we talk about these storms kind of merging into that storm in Tutwiler. Well, it's not only merging, but they're taking over. So they're feeding that lifting mechanism there, kind of feeding into these storms and allowing those tops to elevate and allowing some hail to potentially form out of this. And I think this is our next big weather maker in regards to some severe weather reports as we get here in North Mississippi. I do want to clear this out on our 3D mode and look at our severe threats, because this also indicates that we're getting some elevated confidence in at least some large hail coming down to the surface. So in Brooks, 2-inch hail, I think that's overdoing it, but I don't think it's far off. I think maybe half-inch to an inch hail is definitely possible there in the Brooks community as it continues to work its way east there out of LaFleur County and then out of Sunflower County into LaFleur County. My apologies there. So yeah, this will be one to monitor for sure. We are a bit of a ways away from the radar site, so it might be a little bit different there at the surface, and that's why your reports do matter. So let us know what's happening and keep us updated with your reports there in the chat. So, Kev, did you say that they issued a warning?
I misread it. They actually extended the severe thunderstorm warning for Lauderdale and Clark further down south.
Gotcha.
So that was the other warning.
Well, let me say this. I would not be shocked at all if Northwest Mississippi gets one here shortly because of that large hail potential. But I do think that with what we talked about earlier, how they need to see those reports to verify that, I think that's where we stand here entering into the evening hours, because that hail has remained on the smaller side, at least here in North Mississippi. Now, they did extend that one in Lauderdale and Clark County, like Caleb was mentioning a moment ago, due to the strong wind report that we got there in in Lauderdale County, just north of Meridian, there at the airport. So while it looks unimpressive, and you'll look at this and say, Gabe, what exactly are we tracking? It's not going to be that impressive aloft. We do have to look all the way down to the surface in order to see some of that wind and the potential that it does have. So it's not going to look impressive, but trust me, we've gotten confirmed reports there at the ground saying that this is going to be a gusty setup. Now, the storm back towards Neshoba that was working its way into Kemper County, not as impressive as it was a moment ago. The reason why it caught our attention for a moment was because we got that probable signature, but have not gotten confirmed reports out of the Damascus area, so that is a positive as well. But it does show that some hail is possible as we go through the rest of our evening and overnight hours. So severe thunderstorm warning in place until 7:45. This is on this storm towards Lauderdale County, working its way into Clark County. And as we drag this out, this was a fast-moving storm whenever we looked at this a little bit earlier on. And I'm going to keep it around that same speed, taking it about, well, we'll go 35 on this. And clearing off some of those locations, making sure that we have a full and complete track. So Lisbon 724, Butler 735, and Pennington by 737. I'll add in some of those communities along the way. You see Standard 658, the Bonita 7 o'clock. My Spanish teacher would appreciate that one. The Ward area 703, Charles 706, Enzor 707, Increase 713, Yantly by 713 as well, Derby 716, and Hurricane Creek by 719. So this will be one that we continue to watch for as it moves through the state line, basically further out towards out Lauderdale and Clark County. Now, one thing I am looking at here behind the scenes, and I'm going to put this on another loop here so we can assess this together. Okay, so we have an outflow boundary. Yes, Battle of the Boundaries is back in case you missed our first edition and our second edition, third edition. That's been what it is here with our summer forecasting. So there's your boundary, still working its way towards the south and west, and that's allowing for additional development towards Walnut Grove, increasing some of the development there and potentially producing some thunderstorm development and maybe some strong thunderstorm development down the line. But as we look, Bay Springs working its way northwest, these two are going to collide and provide additional development towards Forest, out along Highway 35, continuing closer to the Jackson metro area. So there's your boundaries. Another boundary towards Mendenhall, another boundary out here towards Walnut Grove extending off of this storm. So expect a lot of activity to happen here in the next few minutes up until the top of the hour for southern Mississippi as those boundaries loom overhead. Now, as we look at this storm in particular, eventually this will start to form a boundary. It does look like we have one working its way towards Quitman, not Quitman County, but Quitman, Mississippi, along 45 and further south and east towards Heidelberg, Sandersville, and Laurel, Mississippi. So again, additional development possible there, but this branching off of that strong thunderstorm. So we are going to need to monitor this further into the night for any additional development back down there towards South Mississippi and for our Max South viewers. Now, I do want to bring it back up here, just because I am curious how this is going to trend. And I know there's a lot of folks up here that are asking, hey, what about this area? What about my area? And Webb and Drew, we were watching for you for some of that large hail. If that large hail did form, then that large hail did fall. And this would be looking out of Cleveland. Let's bring it back up here and looking towards the north and east. And this will be our Cleveland camera with the North Mississippi Storm Chasers. You have very dark clouds on the horizon as that moves along Highway 3 through the Drew and Brooks community. So this is the storm that we're monitoring here in North Mississippi that has the strongest development. Still no confirmed reports. Caleb, has that changed?
That has not changed at all, thankfully.
Okay, so no confirmed reports, but I do see that you have some power outages there behind you in a pretty good amount. I'm not going to spoil anything that you're going to talk about, but I feel like the picture does it justice.
Yes, no, definitely does it justice. We're talking about several outages out there towards Kemper and kind of where we've been tracking this severe thunderstorm warning that Gabe's been doing an excellent job at. We are starting to see those outages really continue to climb, and I just really wanted to start out here towards Meridian and work our way north because we're continuing to see these outages continue to climb as these storms eventually push out of North Mississippi, kind of Erie, kind of close to the state line. This will keep updating every minute, so I'm sorry if it keeps resetting the camera, but just north of Meridian, we're talking about 737, 335, 46, 46, 28, 121, 82. I mean, several customers out of power within this county. And if we just continue climbing north, you can see the outages and areas affected where these pretty much just outages continue to climb. We're talking about 583, 258, 89, 205, 61. I mean, significant areas continuing to get out of power. That's just south of Scuba. That's in the DeKalb region. But if we go all the way back here kind of towards Louisville here, We are starting to see those outages be reported back here in Winston County, so that continues to be a positive. As we were talking about several, I think we were up to maybe 600 or so, an area out of power out there just outside of Louisville. You guys are coming back online, so that continues to be a positive. And real quick, before wrapping this back up and sending it to Gabe, just to give you a brief overview, you can definitely tell where those outages continue to climb, where we're seeing that color continue to spread. We're not seeing that further up here in our coverage area here in North Mississippi. So those outages we were dealing with earlier, those are coming back online. So I know, Gabe, we're continuing to take a look at that severe thunderstorm warning further on south. That has definitely caused several outages, but it is good to see that the outages we were dealing with earlier, well, you guys are coming back online very quickly.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the positive that we always experience after the event has kind of moved on through. But I will say the event not over just yet. Caleb, thank you so much. And yes, more of those reports starting to populate in there in the Lauderdale County region with the storm damage that took place. Oh, yeah, my apologies there. Thank you. But down towards Lauderdale County, you see where some of those trees down, some of the wind reports of those strong damaging wind gusts up to 58 miles an hour, as was reported just north of the Meridian area, north of the Meridian Airport. Now, I do want to pull up chat because one of the things I was noticing there were some questions about, any rotating storms in Cleveland, Mississippi. There may be some broad rotation aloft, but this is not going to produce any tornadoes. So that's one of the things that we've been monitoring for is we're not in a tornadic setup. There's going to be no tornadoes that form, but you could get some large hail, and you also could get some of those strong damaging wind gusts. I also see Tom Briggs, appreciate you for joining us all the way from Michigan. Yeah, a little bit more of an active setup, but you guys have had quite your active setups throughout the summer season, so I know that you guys are enjoying a little bit of a step back over the next couple of days. But either way, as we look at the chat, yes, everyone is going to be okay. I always say that going into severe weather events, but as we're preparing for what to expect, we're really watching towards Arkansas as those storms continue to move through the Little Rock area and eventually cross the river into North Mississippi, where it could be producing some strong winds, it could be producing some large hail, and we are going to continue to monitor that. Which, speaking of, I have my chat here behind the scenes. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything there behind the scenes. So looking at that storm, yeah, so it looks like that storm near Drew and the Brooks community has kind of taken over there, and it does look like that might be diminishing in strength, so that is a positive heading into our evening. So that is a better look than what we were seeing just a few moments ago. As we go back south towards the Jackson radar site, we're going to get a visual off there towards, let me see something real quick. So you have your two boundaries. Okay, let's do some analysis here. You have your two boundaries, and whenever they make this cross section here, that's where some of these storms could get on a little bit of the higher side. We've seen that, higher meaning stronger. We saw that with the Webster County storm over the weekend on Saturday, where one of those storms was just trying to chug along and it had two boundaries feeding into it. So this storm closer to Decatur, Mississippi, that's going to be one to monitor with additional development possible towards Newton and Chunky, right along I-20, extending more towards Jackson, because it just has two of those boundaries feeding directly into it. Now this boundary is still working its way into this storm into Lauderdale County and then into Clark County, Mississippi. But as we look at the winds, it's just hard to get a good read on this storm if it's diminishing in strength, because you see the amount of storm reports that we're getting. Winds at this speed that is indicated by our Mama Justice Doppler radar should not be damaging. So that tells us that at the surface, these are going to be a little bit gustier, and those wind speeds are a little bit higher as well. As we highlight some of those wind reports, power lines down near Dalewood Shore Lake. We also have some reports of a 56 mile an hour, well 56, my apologies, I think I was saying 58, but 56 mile an hour wind gust measured at the Meridian Airport, and then towards Tumsova, a tree was downed across North Shore Drive, and then in Meridian, a tree fell on a vehicle. Oh wow, I did not know that. A tree fell on a vehicle and power line was downed near Poplar Springs Drive and 26th Street. Well, we're praying that that individual is okay, but either way, it shows that we shouldn't be on the roads traveling through these storms, because even some of those strong gusty winds can knock down a tree, and if you're in the wrong spot at the wrong time, well, it could be your vehicle that's underneath this. So drive with caution. Actually, don't drive at all if you don't have to. And I know we're heading into Wednesday evening where it's those midweek services and folks like to get out and about, but check your Mama Justice Doppler radar before heading out the door. Now, I do think the bulk of this storm has shifted more towards Alabama, and that's a positive. So towards Clark County and towards Lauderdale County, I think we're going to be on the southern fringes of this storm, but some of those storms still, let's look at echo tops here. I think that'll be another way we can tell at the surface Yeah, I mean, we're still talking about 55,000 feet there within the York, Cuba, and Smith area here in the Mississippi and Alabama state line, right along I-20 at this point. So as it continues to trend south and east, well, this will be one to monitor for sure. What about southeastern Prentiss County? Are we all clear for the night? So, and then I see Bruce there asking as well. So we're moving back towards North Mississippi. Let me move back up there and let folks know kind of. I'm not going to give an all clear just yet, but I will say we're not really focused at Prentiss County whenever it comes to those storms. Looking out of our Monroe County site, there's not a lot of development. And one of the things that is going to be a limiting factor is the fact that we've had storms already move through Prentiss County and towards Tishomingo County. And this has not been the focused area for us. One of the things that we talked about yesterday night and yesterday evening was you get multiple rounds the further west you go. You get the initial round with those storms forming this morning into the afternoon, and now you're getting that development into the evening. Whereas if you're in northeast Mississippi, it's going to be that individual cluster of storms that we got by early to mid-afternoon. Those produce those severe storms. You see those storm reports there, but it's really a worked over atmosphere that's going to really be an uphill battle to form any more storms. But look at the difference. As we move further out west, west 55, no storms have happened. And another way you're able to see this is with our accumulation map. Dry. I mean, we've not seen much of anything out there. So this is an untapped atmosphere where storms are moving into. So the potential for redevelopment and the potential for strengthening is in play for parts of Hollandale, Greenville, Cleveland, Greenwood. Just as these storms start popping up and moving into the region, we'll be watching that for you because we do expect some additional storms, and the potential is there for these to get on the stronger side. Now, with that being said, we are still looking out of our Monroe County site. And it is still showing some decent returns there in regards to a hail core. And out of our Memphis site, not as impressive as what it once was. But either way, it tried to produce some large hail a few moments ago. Still have not gotten confirmed reports there behind the scenes. But this is to be the storm that we need to watch with additional development back behind it. I do want to also look at the lightning with this storm. So towards Blue Lake and Drew, the areas that we've been mentioning here for a few moments now, you know, we were at 60 strikes at the top of the hour, or at least a little bit before the top of the hour. Now we're up to 147. So the intensification in the lightning shows a strengthening there as well. And back behind it, plenty of lightning to report across the Mississippi River. In fact, I believe our West Helena camera is not too far away here. I might be a little bit off there. But you know what? Let's take it. I don't think we're too far away here. So as that West Helena camera pulls up, it doesn't look that energetic. Yeah, not a lot of action going on. So this might be, you know what, this might be positioned a little bit too far north. That might be what's happening. So, sorry, I looked at it and it's like, well, that's chill. So yeah, there you go, West Helena, just a little bit too far north. If we were looking more south, then we'd see all of that lightning and all of the heavy downpours taking place. So driving on the Mississippi River does have to take some caution because of those storms moving into the area. But as we continue our coverage, it continues to be for this severe thunderstorm for parts of Lauderdale and Clark County, moving it back to our Monroe County, down to our Jackson radar site. One of the things that I'm watching is as this outflow kind of recedes out there towards the west, if that'll take the lift with it and limit what this storm is capable of. Our base wind mode, not showing anything overly impressive, even comparable with what we had a little bit earlier on, not really comparable there. If we're getting anything, this is really out towards the Dove and Cuba area, towards Lauderdale and Tune Suba, right there towards the I-20 region. I mean, that's the strongest wind we're getting. It's just so hard to tell because the only time we're getting those strong wind gusts is whenever those reports come in at the surface. So I would say we're really looking along I-20, extending more into, is this Sumter County? Let me make sure of that here behind the scenes. My Alabama geography, let's see how well it is. Sumter, oh sweet. So Sumter County, Alabama, seeing this storm kind of move west into that region, into southwest Alabama. So it's going to be moving out of our coverage area here in southeast Mississippi. So looking at the overall setup, what do we have left? Well, there's not another severe thunderstorm warning, but it's not impossible that we add to it. In fact, as we look at some of those storms, actually some of that severe weather risk, that does remain in place through our evening. Not many changes happening with the National Weather Service there in Memphis and Jackson, kind of coordinating with the Storm Prediction Center on this risk area. But it's still in place because of these storms in Arkansas and how they'll carry over here into North Mississippi. Bring it back to our Mama Justice Doppler radar. Well, if we look at those storms up there in Cleveland as the main focal point for us here. So a lot of folks asking about Cleveland. Is there any rotating storms? What is the wind looking like? basically we're seeing our summertime thunderstorm, but that latest signature, I want to see, getting some lighter greens. So it might be a brief intensification of the winds through the Blue Lake community. Yeah, up to 22 miles an hour. That's some pretty decent gusts there. So let's track this storm out, and let me make sure I have the right movement on this. Almost moving east as it's kind of coagulating into the line. Is that?
This is a Greenville, if you want to take a look at those storms out in the distance.
Okay, yeah, well, let me do a track, and then I will come to you with that. So as we track this out, it's not moving overly fast. What did we say? Oh, what was it? 15 to 20 miles an hour? Not overly fast on this one at all. We'll take it at 18, and if that's too slow, then we will adjust it. But this is not a severe storm. But over towards Glendora, we're watching that for you for some small hail development, some heavy rainfall, and some gusty winds as well. Whitehead by 7:14. This timing's not right, because I remember Whitehead was a little bit later on. So let me go back on a 30-minute loop here and manually go back here to track this out. But with that being said, it doesn't have a ton of movement to it. So as we measure that out, so up to 20 miles an hour. So we weren't far off. We can up that all the way to 20 miles an hour to give more of a heads up. And as we continue to track this towards the east, we'll take it at 20. There's a look at Glendora, 7:18. There towards the Somerville region by 7:19. And towards Phillip, we're 7:27. The Hatton community, 7:33. Hugo by 7:38. The Distal community, 7:43. Sharkey, Parsons, 7:48. And then 7:56. Holcomb by 8:07. And Leverett by 8:08. This is that storm that we are watching with additional development back behind it, keeping us busy through the rest of our evening. So I want to stay tuned for coverage. We'll probably have plenty of it through the evening hours for sure. Now, Caleb, you were saying Greenville?
Yes, I'm kind of going behind the scenes, pointing them towards the storms. You can definitely see them from a distance, just how high these clouds are.
Yeah, you're getting a look at some of the anvil that's almost trying to form there with those elevated storm tops. And it's a pretty impressive structure, all things considered. One thing that is, I'm not even going to say it because it's not going to last long. I almost said it's looking a little bit wispy, so that might be a deteriorating storm, but that doesn't last for long. These are cyclical storms, meaning that they intensify and then they weaken and intensify and weaken, follow that same cycle, hence the cyclical part of it. And that cycle will continue with this batch of storms as it moves through the western sections of our viewing area, just because it's an untapped atmosphere once again. So as we continue to see around Meridian, this warning in place until 7:45. You know, they'll probably work this part of the warning out. I do want to take a look at wind mode before I say too much, but I'm not overly impressed by it. So as it continues to track towards the east in our hail swath, not showing much either. Our peak threats, not looking as impressive. And let me look at echo tops. Those coming down a little bit more as well. About 50,000 feet there towards Tumsuba, as we talked about a moment ago, but it does look like that is coming down. But as that continues over there towards southwest Alabama, this is going to be where it maintains strength, and it still looks pretty impressive there towards the York community in Livingston, where, you know, it looked like that over Meridian where we got 56-mile-an-hour winds. So it can still produce strong winds despite not looking the prettiest aloft. This isn't actually far away from Birmingham. You know, we're probably equidistant between Birmingham and Jackson. Let me take a look at a Birmingham and see what they have. So bring it back in on this storm towards Sumter County. Even that's kind of pointed more towards the York community. This is still looking very high up in the sky just because it is so far away from the radar site. So it's not going to be the best reading there. I want to pull up the chat, make sure I'm not missing anything here behind the scenes. What about Maven? What about Bruce? We were talking about that a few moments ago. Maven worked over atmosphere as well, so I'm not overly concerned with what's going on in your area. And I know that there's some recovery efforts still ongoing from the weekend and still ongoing tonight. So a few showers and storms, not at all impossible, but I don't see much that I'm concerned with there in Maven as of right now. The bulk of the strong storms are actually out west of 55. So that's positive for you guys. Watching from Moorville, appreciate you for watching. I believe, Kathy, appreciate you for watching from Moorville. And I do want to say Moorville should be relatively chill tonight compared to what we saw a little bit earlier on today. And looking back south, you know, we might have additional development happening right along the boundaries. It's always the boundaries. This one, just along Highway 13 towards Raleigh, that might be developing a little bit more of a hail core. So wouldn't be shocked if that's one they're keeping eyes on for at least a potential strong storm here in the next few moments. Now, they have trimmed off that previous warning a few moments ago. Now we're left with this one warning until 7:45 for Lauderdale and Clark County. This is on the outer fringes of the Jackson coverage area, now moving more into Alabama. Now, I do believe that this storm, the peak strength of this storm has shifted into Alabama. And I know winds have not looked impressive at all in this storm, but I think that this threat has kind of worked its way out. So that's a positive. And I don't see Matt there behind the scenes. I am curious, with this warning, we're live for severe thunderstorm warnings. If we want to stall coverage to get things ironed out here behind the scenes once this kind of phases out, or, if I know that he's busy working on things behind the scenes, but, if there is any thoughts on that. But we'll continue to track this out through the 7:45 hour or until they expire this warning. So I keep it here for the very latest. We'll be with you guys through every severe thunderstorm warning. Now, Caleb, I continue to look at that map, and it just is not something that makes me happy, I should say. So power outages continue to be a major concern for Mississippians heading through tonight.
Yes, definitely so, and that's just the unfortunate part about this storm that continues to make its way further south. Now, I will say it does look a lot more prominent out there in Alabama, but we are still dealing with that severe thunderstorm warning that you saw just briefly behind the scenes and on the big monitor right there. But, I mean, it's a good thing that you saw that warning. It's kind of overlaying it exactly where these outages are occurring, so we're dealing with several customers. In fact, we can talk about 3,470 customers affected with East Mississippi EPA. So they just continue to have a lot on their plate throughout the rest of the night as these storms just continue digging further and further south. We're talking about 737, 583, 311, 258, 151, 89, 205. The numbers just keep climbing, and that's just what we don't want to see here, especially further down into central Tennessee. Now, I know that that's kind of a bummer start to power outages, but wanted to cover that real quick before we could start talking about some positives, especially out here towards Winston. We have not seen any more outages get reported. In fact, we continue to see those come back online, so that is always a positive there. Take a look at our Tom Bigby Electric. I mean, very isolated. We're still dealing with kind of these blue boxes spread out between Lee and Itawamba, but I mean, if we were to click on them, 1, 1, 1, see if we can go all the way, 1, 1, 1. There we go. So even one outage, still significant. I know that means y'all are without power, but they are doing an excellent job to get that back online for you guys. So still dealing with a few outages out there in Lee and Itawamba, but those continue to be very sparse. Taking a look out here towards Fort County, we are starting to see these numbers decrease. This was another hot spot that we were talking about as those severe thunderstorm warnings that we're dealing with. Dealing with almost 2,000 customers affected. So that continues to climb. We're talking about 1,800 customers affected. Noxubee, you guys are starting to come down, 171. Lowndes, 175. Oktibbeha, still just 3 shy of 400. But you can definitely tell where those outages are a little bit more prominent down here in central Mississippi, and where they're starting to get a little bit better. So I know that's what we're going to continue to take a look at here, Gabe, but still just several outages all across our region. I think our total outages, at least throughout this website, saying 5,000 customers out in Mississippi. So still very significant, and we want to make sure to keep tracking that as the evening progresses.
Yeah, and power outages, of course, the main concern, and honestly amounting to a lot of the reports that we're seeing here in the Mississippi coverage area. Caleb, thank you so much. And as we bring it full screen here for what we're seeing on our Mama Justice Doppler radar, we literally mentioned this 5 minutes ago, how, hey, that's a storm to watch. Well, the storm ended up getting a severe thunderstorm warning attached to it. And the reason why is because there's so many boundaries that are interacting with it, providing it enough lift. 8 o'clock, you can see there is the severe thunderstorm warning in Smith County, and even right there towards northeast Simpson County. But this is working its way closer to I-20. And the specific thing that we are watching for is going to be that gusty wind along the leading edge. One thing I do want to look at here is the vertical development and see if this is what we call a cyclical thunderstorm. So don't take it that horizontal. There we go. So putting it on that loop, and I'm only going to go about 30 minutes here because these are not long-lived storms by any means. So there's where it develops, starts to see increasing height. Yeah, this is still a building thunderstorm. Yeah, so this will be one that we need to watch for. It has not collapsed just yet. So this is producing some strong winds over there in the Raleigh community into the, what, now 7:21 hour on our Wednesday. So this will be one to watch for, but that boundary is right overhead, and I think that's what's allowing it to lift. Along with that, some hail possible. Oh, possible. Hang on, go to that latest scan. Yeah, very much possible. I think that's already, ooh, that's a pretty decent core. Let me look back on this scan. No, it doesn't look as impressive, but I think we're talking about some pretty decent hail returns there. Taking it 3D mode one more time, allow me to take it kind of horizontal, and I'm going to cut into this storm real quick. Yeah, this looks like it's still building too. So I don't want to do 1 minute. Let me change this over to 5. So let's go 5 minutes there. So as this is working its way through the 7 o'clock hour, you can see how that darker return shows up pretty early on, and that's having that vertical development. In fact, let me take it 15 minutes and make this a shorter lapse increment, because I think that'll show the development of this storm a little bit better. So there's 15 minutes, and then we'll go 1 minute lapse increments. And then we'll click play and watch this play out. And again, we're watching this storm in particular. Does not look like that's fallen out just yet. Still looks like there's a bit of vertical development to it. So that large hail that's possible, I don't think we've seen it just yet. At least not the peak of those impacts. Those peak severe weather threats, also putting that on there. Very much so. Talking about large hail, and this could be our largest hail that we'll see today here in North Mississippi, or here in Mississippi, I should say. 3+ inch hail in the Raleigh community, working its way along Highway 18 and Highway 35 and Highway 13, I should say. Now that has shifted more towards Burns, but we're still talking 3+ inch hail. This is a potentially a very well, it could be damaging. If we're talking 1.5 inch hail to 2 inch hail out of this, that's where we could see some of those, dents on the car type thing, saying, hey, you need to cover your vehicle, put it in the garage or something like that. So our folks there at Max South, Caleb, you can do those pinpoint pushes for alerts. I think it'd be worthwhile to go down there to Smith County and let them know that they're looking at a potentially damaging setup with this hail core that's developing overhead. So just let them know live now, tracking a severe thunderstorm down there in Smith County. And you can do one of those focus locations as well. I do want to take a look back at this storm in Lauderdale County. It does look like this is starting to become a thing of the past, fortunately, with the peak of those winds actually out there towards southwest Alabama. But Matt, out towards Smith County, that's definitely picked up some steam, and unfortunately, it looks like it's picked up some hail in the process. I don't believe there's audio.
No audio.
So bringing it back full screen, Smith County as well as towards Simpson County. This is where the severe thunderstorm remains in effect until 8 o'clock on our Wednesday. And this is where we're talking about that limited hail threat. Well, it's might not be so limited here in Mississippi, as those hailstones could definitely get on the larger side. I want to make sure, let me bring up chat here behind the scenes to see if we have anyone in Smith County. Doesn't look like we have any reports there in Smith County, but I do assume that we are going to be tracking some large hail. And whenever we're talking future radar, I do see that is Destiny there in the chat. We'll get that up here in a few moments. We're live now to kind of talk about the severe weather potential throughout tonight and the severe weather that we're experiencing right now there in Smith County. I mean, that's a pretty decent core once again. And let me take it 3D mode once again, because I do think that we're talking about some decent sized hail, and that might be an understatement. So kind of cutting into it, I think it's fallen out now. So right there's your darkest returns. It still looks a little bit elevated. We might still be elevated on this. Let me not take it as far. There we go. Put it on a loop. Let's go over this 15-minute loop. Okay, so this is in the top of the clouds by now. So right there, we're still elevated here. It has not fallen out. And this has been aloft for a decent bit of time. And one of the things that always concerns me is the longer it's in the cloud, well, it has those downdrafts that are pushing it through. Then the updrafts take it back through the top of the cloud, interacting with those ice crystals. And then they come back down, and then they'll move back up. And you're looking at a hailstone that's becoming larger and larger as we continue through the rest of our evening. So this has not fallen out just yet. And this could very easily be hail in excess of an inch, maybe even larger than that in some circumstances down in Smith County. Before I get too far away, I do want to take it on the broader scale. Let me take it out of 3D mode. And I want to look towards northwest Mississippi to make sure I'm not missing anything on these storms. Overall, I'm not concerned with what I'm seeing. It looks to be just some typical thunderstorm activity. It does look like there's some areas that try to produce some small hail, but still a bit of a ways away. I mean, we're Glendora up to 55,000 feet, so that's decent tops. Even out there towards Duncan, we're about 55,000 feet. So there are a few areas to watch for, but overall, I would say Smith County has the most attention right now, because if we compare it, or when we're talking about those potential peak impacts, and we're not getting any of those dark purples here in northwest Mississippi, so that's at least a positive for us. But the only unfortunate part is it's not the case everywhere. And down in Smith County, we're talking about hail up to 2 inches in spots. That's possible with this. Now, one of the things that we also see is with these peak impacts, just because it says 3+ inches, it doesn't exactly mean that it's 3+ inches. It's peak impacts for a reason. But what you could be getting out of this is a lot of small hail or some big stones in the process. So both of which are possible out of this setup. It does look like, let me check that latest scan. That might be starting high. I might be, let me do one more thing to track it, and then I'll tell you if it's fallen out of the storm just yet. So let's go ahead and cut into it one more time. I'm gonna go on those darkest returns. There you go. And let's take it kind of horizontal to the map. I think it's still elevated. It still has not fallen out. That scan right there at 720, you can see how it has an elongated setup. That's because that's those updrafts kind of taking the hail into the top of the storm, and there it continues to sit as of 728, 729. But if this falls out, we're looking towards Raleigh. There's not a ton of movement. This is going to be right over, I believe that it's either highway or county road over there, County Road 18 or Highway 18. I would assume that's a Highway 18, but I got to get more familiarity with down south, down in South Mississippi. So moving it more from an aerial point of view here, we're going to go back on our peak severe threats, still maintaining it. And that hail swath continues to look impressive as each one passes by. So yeah, all things pointing to some pretty large hail. Folks there at True Shield Roofing. For anyone that is tuning in down there in Smith County, we're watching a severe thunderstorm warning for you, and that does include Simpson County until 8 p.m. And one of the things that we have a partnership with here at Mississippi Live is with True Shield Roofing, to where if you submit the largest hailstone for that day, well, you get a $100 gift card to try and give back and help with some of the damage, because with this setup, I do think we're going to be talking about some damage out of this, whether it's with those gusty winds or with the large hail that we're expecting out of this. Then that's what we we partner with True Shield Roofing to try to give back to you guys. So down in Smith County, you know, for those that are watching, send that in through the Mississippi Live Weather app, and we will show that off here at the I guess 7:30, 8 o'clock hour whenever those reports do start to come in. So keep it here for the very latest, and appreciate you guys for tuning in and trusting us to keep you guys safe, because this is going to be an impactful storm. One thing that I am seeing here, though, and this is a positive but also a negative, and I'll tell you why it's both. You get that area of rain-cooled air. So this is a collapsing storm at this point, where you get that brief intensification of the winds. That's that rain-cooled air kind of jutting off, then that outflow boundary forming beyond it. So this is going to be a collapsing storm here momentarily. The negative is that with that collapsing storm,
It's definitely collapsing. Yeah, no, it's definitely collapsing, because you can see how your downburst, you know, I mean, just basically your downburst circle there.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, that is the ring right there. So it is collapsing. It just hasn't completely collapsed. So this is probably pretty easily been 60-mile-an-hour wind. And I mean, maybe golf ball size hail. Golf ball might be pushing it, but at least severe hail on that, right at that spot there.
And that's the unfortunate part too, is that hail was still aloft on that latest scan, and whenever it collapses, well, the hail comes with it.
Yes and no. Always, the one thing to always remember on this is that this is always going to be a little bit behind, because it takes longer to do full volume scans. And so we'll cut into that where you're at there. Yeah. And on a hot day like this, some of the hail, I mean, a decent chunk of the hail doesn't make it down to the surface. And that just kind of enhances the wind. So I would say at this point here with the next scan, it's probable most of the big hail is falling at this moment. When you figure that the last volume scan we have aloft, where we got a complete volume scan, was back at 24, 25 after. So we're about 10 minutes later. So I'd say it's highly likely that the biggest hail is probably falling out of it. And that's probably good for Raleigh there, that it doesn't quite make it. But certainly not good for the folks northwest of that.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm curious to see the reports that are submitted, because I think that that's going to be, you know, if we get any submissions from down there in Smith County, that would be the winner for today with what we've seen so far. But some additional development in northwest Mississippi, at least trying to fire off a few more storms through the evening.
Well, and then I also saw in between, you know, a spot down there, just southeast of Walnut Grove, that probably has a little bit of hail with that. Maybe not quite the full on severe. And yeah, I'm interested. These have gotten heavier, but they've never really kind of crossed that threshold yet.
Mm-hmm.
They look like elevated. I mean, they look like, you know, you have your warm front there, and then just kind of little elevated storms largely.
Yeah, and the storm tops have been about 50,000 in spots. Some of them try to get a little bit more interesting, but yeah, it's kind of where they've peaked out at. And I think that's also a limiting factor, is you don't have those extremely high cloud tops, but you've not really had that today, honestly.
No, you haven't. But I mean, in wind producers like this, that's not the usual thing. And then they just went ahead and issued severe thunderstorm warning for Scott and Newton County up there on that storm.
So there you go. The night continues. So bringing it back full screen here, you can see that severe thunderstorm warning in effect until 8:15 for Newton and Scott County, like Matt was mentioning just a moment ago. And that's due to the potential for hail, but also the wind. It's not impressive. And I want to say this as kind of a preface to a lot of the storm coverage that we're about to do. The winds are not going to look impressive aloft. We saw it down there in Meridian whenever the gust measured to 56 miles an hour, and then, you know, aloft it was like 14. So at the surface is a little bit more impressive than what we're getting aloft, but as we're looking at our True Shield Roofing hail threat, we're still in the possible category. So this isn't looking as large of a hail core as further down south in Smith County, but out in Scott County we are still getting some of those wind signatures that are going to be a little bit stronger, but and then some small hail is possible as well.
One thing I'll note on this is about, you can check over on links on the left-hand monitor there on Mama Justice Stop, and it'll give you the height. 2,000 feet, yeah, is too high. When you're in Meridian, you're about 4,500 to 5,000 feet up. So, I mean, it's what happening a mile up is completely different surface, as you mentioned. But yeah, you can find that info. I think sometimes that kind of, helps tell that story really well.
No, yeah, I didn't even know that was a feature. So learn something new every day.
Yeah.
So
wherever
yes.
the pixel is.
Yeah, okay, I gotcha. Yeah, that makes an added tool. So yeah, 2,000 feet on this storm away from the radar site, and compare that to the Meridian storm like we were looking at. Yeah, that has it about, well, let's see right there, 5,500. So it's basically more than half of that here on this Scott County storm as it's moving through the area. And then of course, as we look at this storm, I want to make sure I'm not missing anything down here for you guys down there in Smith County. It does look like the largest of that hail has fallen out. You know, Caleb, do we have any pictures coming in from Smith County?
Thankfully, we don't. So I have not seen any at this moment in time. Hopefully, we can keep it that way, but would not be surprised that there's still some down there. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm curious to see whether it's through the National Weather Service, through our chat, or through the North Mississippi Storm Chaser chat. So, you know, what we get down there. I think we're going to be talking about some decent hail coming out of I know I'm saying Raleigh. It's right outside of Raleigh there in Smith County. But the winds, as we were talking about a moment ago, kind of shooting off that outflow boundary, and that's going to mean that this is a collapsing storm, and those heights are going to come down here the next few moments. But where we're seeing some heights up around 55,000 feet is towards Damascus. This storm continues to remain on the stronger side, and we see that on our Mama Justice Doppler radar with some of that potential hail trying to move on through, but also with some of the strong wind gusts. And these wind gusts are probably going to read around 20 to 30 miles an hour, especially in the brighter colors there. It's not as impressive as what it is on the surface. We're still 2,000 feet up, but luckily it's not 5,000 feet up like what it was over there towards Meridian. So we are getting a better view there. And this severe thunderstorm warning in effect until 8:15. The other one in effect until 8 o'clock. Let's try and track this. I'm going to do the best I can, but there's usually not a ton of movement on these storms. So going over 30 minutes, and we're going to make sure we do an updated track on this because it is a new storm that we're tracking. So it does look like we have some movement to it. So let's go ahead and drag this back, and we're going to manually do this behind the scenes. And as we drag that through, I have it about, well, that was over the half hour, so about 18 miles an hour. I'm just going to go ahead and up it to 20. And I know they're tracking this core in particular, so we'll do two different tracks, one for that core and then one for the overall line. So as it goes 20 miles an hour through the south and east, we see the Conohada, that's new for me, by 740, Linwood 748, Union 749, McDonald and Neshoba 752, Jeff 758, Decatur, this is Decatur, Mississippi, not Decatur, Alabama, 758, Pine Bluff 801, Willoughby 808, Beulah 811, Greenland 812, Good Hope by 814, and towards Newton by 818. I do want to clear this off to make sure we talk about every location that we can. And as we clean things up a bit, Decatur 758, Newton 818, and Hickory by 826 a little bit later on along I-20. This is one of the storms that we're watching, and I want to go specifically into the core on this storm, and you see that with the purple showing up, that purplish pink. That's going to be where that hail core lies and potentially some of those strongest wind gusts. So as we track that part out in particular, and we're going to go to the edges of this warning, we're going to go south and east at about 20 miles an hour, taking it all the way to I-20. Piketown, we're 742. Conohada by 751. Decatur by 802. Jeff, 803. Pine Bluff, 810. Cedar Grove, 823. 831 towards Hickory and Newton. And Poplar Springs by 835. This is one of the storms that we're watching. It does look like that boundary is starting to move out away from it, so that is a positive as well. And you'll see that on this 30-minute loop. You know, whenever this storm was kind of strengthening, that boundary was a little bit closer. But as these boundaries start to become further away, the storm becomes outflow dominant, and that should start to eventually collapse this storm here over the next few moments. So I'm hopeful that that does come down as that outflow boundary moves further and further away. But boundaries have told the story today. And boundaries will allow additional development into the Jackson metro area as you see several different boundaries. Let me just stand off to the side of the screen. I can count 1, 2, 3, 4. There was 5, 6, there were 7 and 8 right there on just your screen. So plenty of boundaries, plenty of activity, plenty of different quasi-cold fronts to allow the lift to happen for these storms. And Caleb, I've been seeing the lightning flash over there for like 5 minutes now.
Yeah.
Is that Clarksdale?
This is Clarksdale.
Okay.
They are pretty much like in it right now. Thankfully not severe warned, but heavy downpours for the northern portions of the Delta.
Well, let's go up towards our Memphis radar site. And as I do that, I'm going to bring in Caleb so he can kind of talk to you about what he's seeing whenever it comes to power outages, because that is something we see with the lightning. But also, you know, just out of the camera, I needed them to see that as well before I could pull it up on my. So take it away. What are you seeing?
Yeah, no, Still dealing with those power outages more central Mississippi. What I am keeping my eye on is for the northern portions of the Delta and whether or not we will start to see outages start to build on up. And that's what you're going to see when Gabe pulls up that camera behind the scenes in the next few minutes, just how disruptive these storms continue to be. Even when they're not warned, they can still just be messy and cause some outages, and that's what a few of us could learn heading into the evening hours. But those outages are still very centralized in central Mississippi. We are now talking about 6,000 and almost 500 customers affected here in North Mississippi. And I think the last update we were talking, I remember saying 5,000. So that might mean we went up almost a full 1,000 or 1,500 since then. So these outages unfortunately continue to climb. Now, outside of our coverage area is where it's most significant for us here in North Mississippi, where a lot of you guys tune in, really not dealing with it as significant as what it was earlier on. And we can go kind of thumb through our tabs just to kind of help bring some relief. Again, very isolated here in Lee and Itawamba. I know some of our customers are out of power. Each of these boxes represents one person. So I know the EPAs are still out and about trying to get that fixed for you guys here in Lee and Itawamba. If we take a look out here in Northeast Mississippi EPA, this was an area that we just kept highlighting almost several times, which is the overall area of outages that were reported kind of along the county line between Union and Lafayette County. That was 600 or more. That has since not been the case. We are now down to 5 members affected within this EPA. Now, Fort County continues to impress, but we are still dealing with quite a few outages out there within Clay, Oktibbeha, Lowndes, Noxubee, portions of Choctaw. So this continues to be an area that we're watching, but definitely watching on a good note as these numbers continue to decrease. I know this was an area hit hard with those severe thunderstorm warnings earlier. That's still the same complex that we're taking a look at in central Mississippi. They just continue to dig further and further south outside of our coverage area, and they're leaving behind several outages in its wake. Taking a look at East Mississippi EPA, we're talking about 3,709 customers affected alone within this Electric Power Association. So they have a ton of work on their plate this evening, which unfortunately means might take a little bit longer for some of these outages to get back online for you guys, and maybe not as quick as what North Mississippi has been able to see so far. But another thing that Matt points out a lot is when we're dealing with these outages and how widespread they are, sometimes fixing those fixes quite a few of you guys at the same time. So I know that EPAs, they're going to continue to do a fantastic job. They've unfortunately had a busy few days here in North Mississippi, as you guys have endured through these stormy conditions. But I mean, Meridian just continues to get hit hard. We can kind of start again, kind of just on the outskirts. We're talking about 737 just north, northeast, 335, 311, right along the county line and state line, getting closer and closer towards Alabama. But I mean, further north we go, kind of the path or the wake of these storms as they continue to dig further south. 583, 500, 151, 89. This is all kind of within Moscow and central Mississippi. And the good news is you can already tell how hard they're working already. For those in Winston County, we were dealing with 600 or more affected outside of Louisville. We are now down to 2 just northeast of the city. So that continues to be fantastic news. But Gabe, I know that we're continuing to get ready for more showers and storms that I know are rumbling further up north in the northern portions of the Delta. You guys are probably hearing that, getting that heavy rainfall. Those could prove to be a little bit disruptive into the overnight hours or kind of our evening ahead. So I'm going to continue to keep my eyes on those outages. And good news is, before we hand it back, 6,259. So that's almost 200 less that we were just talking about when we started that update. So progress continues to be made.
That is a positive, Caleb, for sure. I'm trying to mess with some things here behind the scenes, so bear with me.
No, you're good.
I think I got it. Let's see. I did it too much. Let me bring it full screen here. So what I'm trying to do is toss to where we could be getting some of that larger hail. So as we bring it full screen here, I'm going to take it 3D mode, and as we track this out, and we're going to take it 3D mode, technology not happy. Actually, Caleb, I'm going to toss to you for 1 second.
Okay.
Just keep going over this power outages.
Yeah, well, before we go over power outages, let me just talk about damage reports and lack thereof. We're not seeing any reports of hail, at least through pictures that you guys can send in through the Mississippi Live Weather app. So whenever we don't get any hail pictures, that's fantastic. I know we would like to see what these storms are producing, but technically, if we're not getting any, hopefully they're not producing much, or at least nothing significant for us to be able to kind of get a picture in time for. So I just kind of wanted to recap some of the damage that we've seen. Unfortunately, if we're not dealing with that hail, we are dealing with the threat of wind and some of those straight line kind of just wind gusts blowing on through. And this was sent in, let me make sure to give credits, because I want to make sure to always give you guys those credits out there. This was in Starkville, sent in by Vic, and they were saying that a tree fell on their power line in their front yard. And you can see both of that here pretty much along the driveway. You can see the fence out there in the background, this large tree fallen, and you can see that power line out there in the driveway. So very dangerous. I know they're keeping their distance, not wanting to tempt fate. So just one of those situations where you're kind of just stuck in. You want to report that towards your local EPAs. They will come out there and fix it. So we're still dealing with some of the damage here. This was a lightning strike earlier. And let me pull it up because we may have closed them all. I mean, we were dealing with a lot of pictures of just shelf clouds moving in Monroe County and Amory. We can kind of highlight those here. I mean, take a look at kind of the structure we're dealing with. We saw a great shot out of our camera out there. I think it was Greenville, where we were looking north towards some of those storms that continue to push in, but we can continue to take a look at these images. Again, thankful to see scary looking clouds, SLCs, compared to actual storm reports. We'd much rather see those get sent in, but I mean, the structure as this kind of cooler, denser air just collides with the warmer, humid air, forces it upward. So that is what's happening here. You can see that structure with that storm, very mature earlier on. This is what we dealt with throughout Monroe County. For you guys out there in Amory, pretty much most, if not all, of these pictures came out of the Amory community, which is kind of how well defined those clouds looked. Now, unfortunately, we did get kind of these images sent in, and I want to make sure I give you guys the right location and author. This was sent in by Les off of Highway 388, 3 miles east of Brooksville, and this was sent in around 5:33. And let me pull that back up for you guys so you can see. I mean, downed power lines. I know this car being very safe, kind of just pulling off. You do not need to drive through that. You can kind of see the blockage behind it as cars continue to pile up because they know not to tempt fate and at least just try to drive around it. Those are dangerous situations that I know the EPAs have been on top of with kind of restoring power, getting those power lines in a safe manner, kind of off roads, restoring transportation along those roadways. And that's another thing that we point out a lot as far as ice storm. That can bring a lot of PTSD. We're thankfully not going to have to deal with these outages quite as long because we're not dealing with road conditions impassable. Now, we will have situations like these to where they'll get out there, help restore it very quickly, but roads aren't icy, and this is not going to be like a week or 2 week long event where we just have to struggle to get that power back. But power outages, that's going to continue to be the story as heavy rainfall and disruptive storms just continue to make their way through Mississippi.
Unfortunately, Caleb, you are exactly right. Tracking out those power outages, great job just keeping everyone informed and just getting some things behind the scenes and communicated and knocked out. So appreciate you for taking over for a little bit. But as we continue to watch the rest of our evening, current time 7:48. Let me actually bring it full screen.
I think there was a flood advisory that just got issued, by the way.
Where at?
Further up north for Coahoma, Mississippi, kind of exiting Arkansas into northern portions of the Delta.
Gotcha. Okay, well, we'll check that out here in just a moment. Makes sense with the amount of rainfall that's building in. While it's not necessarily producing severe weather, it still has impactful weather with the amount of rainfall that we have been seeing. One of the things that we were also tracking was a storm right there towards Smith County. It intensified pretty quickly, but as you see there, those tops have started to collapse. The severe threats have started to collapse as well, and things are looking a little bit better. And the wind's also coming down on that storm as well as that alpha boundary kind of juts out away from the storm. For that brief moment, though, we were talking about some large hail and also some potential of some strong damaging wind gusts. So yeah, lightning is crazy in Clarksdale. Is there a second storm for Northeast Mississippi tonight? I'll bring it up there here in just a moment. But looking at this storm in particular, we're also seeing that lightning come down a little bit more. So that, actually, I say that. It was coming down a larger scale. It's actually increasing on the rest of it, but Either way, we're not expecting this to last past the 8 o'clock hour. I believe the National Weather Service there in Jackson looking to keep that warning in effect all the way through 8 o'clock. Now, we do have this next warning up until towards town. I did it again, Caleb.
Oh.
There we go. We're keeping things cool in here because heat continues to be a big story for a lot of us. And sometimes the studio likes to get a little bit toasty, so we like to keep things cool here in the Mississippi Live Weather Center. Wind mode continues to look relatively the same, and the hail, I think that was the main concern here as this tracked across the area, still remaining more in the possible category. So we will keep eyes on this for sure, but I'm not overly impressed, and those reports have not come out of this storm just yet. So, of course, with this storm in place until 8:15 for that severe thunderstorm warning. Hang on one second. Sorry, looking at the chat here behind the scenes, making sure I'm not missing anything. And it does look like things will remain pretty consistent as we go into the 7:51 hour. 8:15 is that warning for Newton and Scott County. And this one down here until 8 p.m. is in effect for Smith County. And we will, of course, watch for that. And the activity really focused further down south. So that's a positive for us here in North Mississippi. We had our fair share of activity here on this afternoon, but as we've gone through the evening, it's been a calmer forecast. And I say that areas where it's not been as calm is areas that have not seen a lot of storms. And now I'm starting to get that, and as Caleb mentioned, in parts of Clarksdale, getting that aerial flood advisory for equipment in Coahoma. Said every time, Coahoma County. I always want to say Coahoma County, but yeah, Coahoma County. So as we work our way towards that Memphis radar site, you know, it would not be impossible to get some small hail out of this. You're seeing those darker returns on our reflectivity. That's Clarksdale, Friars Point, working its way towards Highway 3, Marks to Tutwiler. But that's really where I would say we could get some small hail. I still am looking at this and not thinking anything severe. So at least there is that with this forecast. But that flood advisory is in effect due to the amount of rainfall that we've received in that same general area. I mean, we have been talking about rain in this same location for what feels like a couple hours now. Just putting it on that 3-hour loop, and we're going to stay out of our Memphis radar site. Yeah, Elaine, Arkansas, off there towards Clarksdale. You can see how some of those rainfall totals amounting to 2 inches, that working its way closer to Highway 61, but really along Highway from Clarksdale to Friars Point and towards Elaine. That's the area that we're watching for that aerial flood advisory. Now that is in effect until 10:45, and the reason why is because look back behind it. Well, I guess you can't if I moved. Look back behind it. Plenty of activity still pushing into the region, so I would not be shocked at all if we're talking 3 to 4 inches there in Clarksdale, at least towards the far northwest portion of our viewing area, towards Coahoma and Quitman County, and then out down there towards Bolivar County as well. So this is the area of focus, and that does continue into Grenada. I saw a few folks asking, actually right on cue there in the chat, about, hey, what about Grenada? Well, Grenada is going to be dealing with these storms as well. The fortunate thing is these have not been severe, but these have been very energetic. These have had plenty of lightning, and that is going to amount to some power outages as we go through the afternoon and evening. Looking specifically at Clarksdale, one Caleb was showing a moment ago, I believe we'll see a lightning strike every second on this camera. Of course, I say that and it stops. No, never mind, it won't. So plenty of activity in the sky, plenty of lightning to see. So stay inside. Do not go where you're susceptible to the lightning, because that's really the concern with this. I do see James Bishop saying no reports on our end in regards to the southern storms. That is so interesting, because down south, I mean, that was as good of a hail signature as we have gotten on any of the storms today, but on a storm in quite a while. So I'm really curious. I feel like, which granted, it's not in a highly populated area, kind of falling outside of Raleigh there in Mississippi, in Smith County, I should say. So as I pull it back full screen, yeah, I mean, this was the hail signature that we had, and I'll have to bring it back to our Jackson radar site. Jackson, there we go. I mean, it still has a pretty decent signature, but whenever you get those dark purples, that's the highest part on our scale, indicating large hail possible. And then you also get our True Shield Roofing hail swath. that's about as dark as it gets. We've never seen a white situation. So usually when you get to be the darker purples and blacks, that's where we of course are watching for some of those hail returns. I'm just shocked that we have not gotten any confirmed reports. That was earlier on, now not as impressive. That True Shield Roofing hail swath has come down. But looking at this one towards the Newton and Scott County area, that's not as impressive as it was just a few scans ago. You can see where that brighter core was with the hail right there towards Damascus, and that was where the warning was issued. Now looking at the latest return, it's doing exactly what we thought it would when it became outflow dominant. It just doesn't have that lifting mechanism to it. I do want to look at those echo tops, still about 55,000 feet, so decent height on that. But the wind mode, that's pretty much the same, but the hail looks like that threat might have come down over that last couple of scans, Matt.
So a report from the Weather Service from Daniel Lamb over there, been there a long time, hail of unknown size falling in Raleigh. So that would have been at 7:52, so only a couple of minutes ago there. So it is producing hail. We just don't know the size, have not got a size on it yet.
Gotcha. Well, that's still good to know, because I was going to say, if we do not get a hail report, at least any thought of hail in that area, I would be shocked. So yeah, verifying that. Appreciate that, Matt, for joining in. Been a busy day here for Mississippi Live Weather, just tracking out these storms. It's exactly what we thought it would be, and that's why we've been previewing it all week long, saying, hey, hail and wind, hail and wind. And what do we get a lot of reports of here for today? Well, a lot of wind, and then those minimal hail reports possible, and then hail of unknown size. I'm curious if we can get a size on that getting further into the evening to just see how that fared up with what we were seeing on our Mama Justice Doppler radar. Now, that storm in Meridian over there towards Lauderdale County has shifted on out, but brought a ton of reports along I-20. So I do pray for vehicles that were traveling along that area, because high-profile vehicles are very susceptible. But even your cars, when you're driving down the road, you can feel it shake a little bit back and forth. And that really means you don't need to be driving in those conditions. But, you know, it can cause damage and cause folks to drive off the road. And we want to make sure we're doing so with extreme caution. So overall picture, I know we've done this a couple of times, and I'll pull that up here in 1 second. But overall picture, we have these severe thunderstorms down there south of our viewing area, more towards the Mac South coverage area, more towards the, honestly, Jackson coverage area at that point. But nonetheless, these are the storms that we're watching for. Those outflow boundaries continue to tell the story, but we have additional development that have produced damage over there in Little Rock, now moving into northwest Mississippi. We've just been fortunate that that has remained below severe limits. And overall, I've not seen any intensification that would tell me otherwise. I did see in the chat, and I'll bring it up one more time, so feel free to put your reports down there in the chat, letting us know what you guys are seeing. But of course, want to keep you guys informed, so put any questions there as well. I do see there, Ebony asking, is there going to be a second storm in Sulligent, Alabama overnight? So zooming things out and looking more towards Sulligent, Alabama, well, it's a pretty chill atmosphere. Where we saw the storms move through earlier on, you can see with those reports almost exactly where it's highlighted through. From Union County off there towards the Starkville area, and then working its way towards the south and east. So there's pretty much your cutoff right there where storms moved through earlier on today. And that atmosphere is used up. But what's been untapped is out here towards the south and west, and that's where storms are starting to fire off. And they could potentially strengthen, moving more towards the southwest part of our coverage area and heading further into the night. So that's where my focus is. So asking about, you know, how far east do you think the Grenada to Clarksdale storms go? I do think they push into Grenada County. I do think they try to get into parts of Webster and Choctaw County too, just because we've not had a ton of development out there. And we are still getting some of these storms that are producing those outflow boundaries down south and South Mississippi, South Central Mississippi, I should say. And that could allow for some additional development for us as well. So that's where my focus is. If you're in Tupelo, if you're in Corinth, if you're in Iuka, even up there towards Ripley, Sulligent mentioned you. Monroe County, very used up. My word, it was an active setup over there in Monroe. But plenty of activity. I do think it's an uphill battle to produce any of those strong storms moving into our future. So pulling it up full screen, I want to look out of our forest camera because we do have a nice shelf being reported by our North Mississippi Storm Chaser, James Bishop. So looking out there, I'll let my nameplate come off of here real quick. Yeah, so there's your shelf cloud. I know it's a little bit grainy at times, but nonetheless still gives us a view, and that's more than we could ask for. So looking, we'll pull up. I saw it for a moment there. I have faith. Will it? Are we going to will it into existence? Yeah, there you go. There's the shelf. You can get the general idea there at the base with the heavy rainfall coming down. So right there in Forest, seeing some of that, some of the storm move through the area. So let's bring it back to our regular Mama Justice Doppler radar. And as we look out of Forest, yeah, that's right into that severe thunderstorm warning. That in place until 8:15. Current time is around 8 o'clock, basically going into the top of the hours. You see behind me there. So as we toss it more towards our Jackson radar, still, let me see what's close actually. So tossing it back to our Jackson radar site. Oh yeah, what am I thinking? So out there towards Forest, working its way along I-20 towards Konohata, I'm not overly impressed by it. I do think they carry out the warning through the 8:15 hour just in case, because this is continuing to work its way through the Newton and Scott County area, I should say, and so that'll be one to keep an eye on for sure. But you know, if we're looking at our hail swath, it has not shown much strengthening taking place. It has maintained itself in the possible category, but I'm not overly convinced on that one. And the wind mode, I'm not overly convinced on that either, at least not with an intensification here over the next few moments. So we will continue to monitor that. And as we track that out, moving through the Newton County area, this will have that southeast movement to it at about 20 miles an hour or so. Let's drag that out. Take it 20. Let's take it along I-20. And south of there, Ebenezer, we're 811. Pine Bluff, we're 812. Cedar Grove, 817. Even towards Jeff at 817 as well. Decatur, 819. Newton, 824. Lawrence, 829. Liberty, 837. Calhoun, 842. Hickory, 845. And Mount Vernon by 848. This is the severe thunderstorm warning that remains in effect. That one there towards Smith County has expired. So we have one warning left, ladies and gentlemen, at least for now, but more storms are possible heading into the night where we could see some strong storms possible. Hopefully they remain below severe limits, but nonetheless, we'll keep eyes over there towards northwest Mississippi. So storms down in Newton and Scott County, that's going to be, honestly, let's keep it on our Forest camera. I'm hopeful that we can keep a view on that one as it moves through the area. Philadelphia might be too far north, or you'd also be going into the rain as well, so it's not going to be the best view. So this is, well, that's a pretty sight with the clouds. I think we're still talking about, and I have it here behind the scenes. Let me adjust the camera there in Philadelphia, and at least make sure it's pointed the right way. It looks like it is, but yeah, I believe that's pointing to the south. So that's a view into the backside of these storms. So nonetheless, we are seeing just how dark those clouds are, and of course, attached to that is some heavy rainfall. But looking out of our Forest camera, because that is still out ahead of these storms, I think that's the one that's worthwhile to keep an eye on. And as this continues to move through the area, you know, Matt, we're seeing a lot of lightning, that low cloud base, the shelf cloud kind of moving into the area. So it looks pretty menacing, an SLC as we call it, but could produce some heavy rainfall, some small hail, and some of those strong wind gusts as well.
Hey, just giving you a heads up, there's some like crackling going on with the mic. I don't know if it's your. Oh, it is? Okay. Okay, yes. Got it. Just wanted to make sure everything was good.
Which, speaking of, Caleb, if you want to track this here for a few moments, and I'll swap out with you for a moment, so that way I can get my voice back. So
I got you.
Perfect.
I know I tried to do it as silent as possible, but got a few mixed in. Which, let me just change the shot here, especially that way, hopefully my mic will pick up the best now, so we can hear all the sound. So we are taking a look at this severe thunderstorm warning that's currently ongoing for Newton and Scott, Mississippi, set to expire at 8:15. So hopefully around 12 minutes to go before we can be warning free here in North Mississippi and pretty much throughout the Magnolia State as a whole. I mean, if we were to kind of zoom this back out, because I know a lot of you guys are asking as far as after receiving these storms, we are not dealing with any severe thunderstorm warnings here within our coverage area and the northern half of Mississippi. We are dealing with that aerial flood advisory that has been issued and pretty much set to expire around 10:45, as you guys aren't doing lots of heavy rainfall here. But as we continue to look further on south, as we've been tracking these strong storms continuing to dig further and further into central Mississippi, kind of getting into the southern portions of the state, we are still taking a look at kind of this strong severe thunderstorm warning ongoing. So that's set to expire around 8:15, and we can zoom in here on this and kind of just analyze it to see what all it's offering us, and maybe if we can get closer to it, maybe expiring a little bit ahead of schedule. But we're going to take a look at it here with our threats, and we'll make sure to continue using our Jackson radar, as this will give us the best look. But we're talking about kind of a darker shade of purple. Thankfully not quite as extreme as what we saw, I believe, of Smith County, where we were dealing with that extreme hail or the possibility for some kind of larger sized hailstones to fall. We're not dealing with it quite as extreme as that. So I think what we saw earlier could be probably of course, the worst case scenario, the peak impact on what we could see. But like our chief meteorologist, Matt Laubon, was saying, it's a summer day. We're dealing with hot temperatures. We're also dealing with a lot of rainfall, which also helps melting hailstones. So it making it to the surface that extreme is going to be a little bit hard for a day like today, which continues to be a positive. But we're dealing with kind of some of those darker purples starting to show up. I believe this is kind of the third color here on our scale. So kind of halfway there on getting more and more extreme. But dealing with that here pretty much right over Conhata, if I said that right. Gabe, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Southern Mississippi, something I'll have to continue working on, but close enough. Yeah, y'all can make sure to correct me in the comments. I definitely want to make sure to pronounce your cities and communities right. But if we were to take a look at this in the past few scans, I mean, you can see definitely why they were kind of issuing that warning. There's some of those darker returns right there, just northeast of Piketown. But I mean, watching this continue, we're talking about those lighter shades of pink and purple, maybe a slight buildup there kind of within the latest scan as this storm continues to try to maintain what it has. These are just pesky thunderstorms that love to bother us during the summertime months. And of course, our Wednesday evening plans. So I know everybody's out and about trying to get to and from their Wednesday night services. And of course, school is back in session across the state of Mississippi. So we're just dealing with busier times here north of I-20 as this storm continues to be the strongest one here in North Mississippi at this time. And we're dealing with the potential for some wind and hail. Now, we were taking a look at our peak threats. Another thing our meteorologist Gabe Maynor has been talking about a lot, that the wind will not look quite as impressive here on radar, but that doesn't mean that it's still gusty. We've already seen kind of some of those reports, unfortunately, get submitted through the Mississippi Live Weather app. Appreciate you guys sending them in, but we also hate having to just kind of go over that damage because we don't want any of you guys experiencing it. But I will say it has been a positive. We're not going to be warning free just quite yet. They issued one further on downstream. That is set to expire at around 9 o'clock and closer towards the 9 o'clock broadcast. But back before that warning got issued, we were talking about damage, and those reports have been very slow coming in through the Mississippi Live Weather app, and that is exactly what we want to see here. But we're still dealing with some more warnings getting issued, this time exclusively for Newton County. I don't know if they barely clipped. I don't think they did. Unless, no, but just a corner of Jasper County set to expire around 9 o'clock. So we're dealing with that now as this thunderstorm, the folks down there in the National Weather Service office in Jackson believe that it'll kind of continue to keep this track that is had. We can even see some of those heavier showers and brighter returns just outside of that warning area. And that is northeast of Pineville, kind of right above and north of Clear Springs, where we're dealing with some of those brighter returns where rainfall is going to be its heaviest and the potential for some hail stones kind of being scattered back with that radar beam. That's what's allowing these brighter colors to return. They're just highly reflective. So that's where we see those brighter colors start to make their way back towards the radar site, where we could be dealing with a few hailstones lofted within that thunderstorm. So we're dealing with these stronger storms pretty much in the central southern regions of North Mississippi. Again, just kind of zooming out so everybody tuning in can still see how we're doing as a whole here within Mississippi and within our coverage area exclusively. We're still dealing with these showers and storms, very disruptive, energetic. We've seen that a lot on our cameras. That aerial flood advisory is ongoing as well, set to expire around 10:45. And we can take a look at that here with our Clarksdale camera. Let's see what we can see here as it takes a second to load in. We're talking about 82 degrees, feels like 86, but still a little bit breezy out there. Just one off of 20, but wow. There's a cloud to ground strike. We just saw that kind of from the top right of your screen all the way down towards the surface. And that's what's unfortunately causing power outages to continue to be the story here in North Mississippi. So even though we're not dealing with anything severe up here in the northern portions of the Delta, I mean, it just takes one bolt to make its way down, strike an unlucky tree, an unlucky power line, and that can cause a few outages that unfortunately we've been accustomed to here in the past few days here in North Mississippi. Let's take a look out here in Cleveland. 90 degrees, feels like 99, and they're all blending together. I don't know if you guys have received any rainfall yet or if it's just been kind of around your city. So I know getting some of this much needed rainfall will of course be much needed as we're dealing with those drought conditions out there in the Delta, but it at least allows you guys to cool on off. I mean, y'all are still feeling like you are in the upper 90s as we're getting closer towards the 9 o'clock hour, just a degree shy of triple digits. So of course, it's always a good thing to feel slightly cooler. Don't want to deal with the severe weather that comes with it, but thankfully we're not dealing with that at this moment in time here in North Mississippi. Let's see if we can get another shot out here with our Greenwood camera. Looks like, oh, I was going to say, it looks like it may have just gone out as it was just frozen here on that water tower here. So we'll have to get a different shot of that, but you can definitely tell what it is facing behind it. And those are those energetic, just disruptive storms in the background. As they just continue to fire off here. And we can take another look out here in Greenville before we go back down to central Mississippi where we're dealing with that severe thunderstorm warning. This is facing east actually. So this is almost kind of where the storms will start to try to make their way into the frame. So we can see some of that lightning out there in the distance, but it's going to be a little bit more prominent right here as they continue to just kind of move their way across this camera lens. So we can see a great shot of that here, and it's probably looking a little bit more northeast than east at this moment in time. So dealing with those storms out there in the distance, you guys in Greenville staying dry, but of course feeling a little bit warmer. 90 degrees, still feeling like 99, so upper 90s is the story. Which, real quick, just for fun, we can take a look at our rolling forward camera, maybe see if our owls come back or if he's around. 84 degrees, feels like 97. You guys staying dry, have not had to deal with any stormy conditions, but at least enjoying a sunset out there in the distance. While the rest of North Mississippi kind of dealing with these rainy conditions. Now, another thing I want to point out with these severe thunderstorm warnings, for the most part, these have been very wind heavy. And unfortunately, we have seen some reports and damage get sent in through the Mississippi Live weather app, through chats in the background, to where we know where the storms are at or what they're capable of. And that's all these blue icons you can see here on the screen. We were starting coverage earlier when it was kind of crossing the state line, starting to fire up here in North Mississippi, continuing its southeastward direction. Several reports down here towards Lowndes County, pretty much Golden Triangle region as a whole, and continuing even further and further on down towards I-20, towards Meridian. And that's where we're currently at right now as far as intensity with these stronger storms. So we're dealing with 2 severe thunderstorm warnings. One set to expire within the next 3 minutes. That's this warning further up north as this storm, which caused that warning to be issued, continues to move ever so slowly further and further southeast. And we could take a look to see here behind the scenes whether or not that speed has changed, so we can give y'all an accurate description on how fast. Okay, yeah, so moving southeast at 15 miles per hour. That's why these warnings take a long time to expire, because we're not in that severe weather mode or setup to where we're seeing these storms just kind of race across North Mississippi. Where it is that heavy downpour, you can just tell that the sky dropped on out and we're good in the next 10 to 15 minutes. These storms are not the case. They just kind of pop up, sit on top of our city and community, dump that amount of rainfall, and we just kind of have to deal with it before it continues to slowly move out, in this case around 15 miles per hour southeast. So let's do a track on that here, as we're even dealing with some of that precipitation further south, but we can take a look at least at the strongest storm within this area, and we'll measure that out, and we'll just go 20, just to give you guys a heads up. As these storms continue to move further and further southeast. So we're talking about Cedar Grove around 8:15, Hazel around 8:16, Newton 8:22, Calhoun 8:34, Liberty 8:34, Bethel 8:35, same for Poplar Springs, Pilgrim Grove 8:41, Garlandville around 8:45, Mount Vernon 8:46, Baxter at 9, and Penalty at around 9:02. And I'd be curious to see if we can pick up on kind of anything else. Newton around 8:22. So I'm not dealing with as highly populated areas kind of down there in central Mississippi, but really dealing with that as it continues to make its way further and further southeast. So we're going to be one warning closer to warning free, but we did see this one get issued and extended, as this one is set to expire within the next minute. So this is no longer the case for you guys out here towards Conehatta, for Newton and Scott, Mississippi. Now, we are still going to deal with this severe thunderstorm warning continuing for you guys in Newton County, but more on this southwestern portion of the county. You guys in the central northwestern portion about to be excluded from that warning, as that one's set to expire, and we start to see this storm continue to drift further and further into the new one. So that's what we're continuing to deal with, as that will lead us towards the 9 o'clock hour here for our Mississippi Live weather coverage, where this severe thunderstorm warning continues to bring some of those heavy wind gusts. They put it at 60 miles per hour and the potential for penny-sized hail. And let's see what that looks like here. I accidentally was just barely off from clicking the right button. Let's zoom back here on this warning that we're continuing to track, and notice how I said warning. We're now down to 1, so that other previous warning has since expired. We're going to make sure to continue looking out of our Jackson radar site. And yeah, I mean, the potential for hail is there. I think it reaching the 1 inch in diameter for it to be classified as severe is going to continue to struggle. We're talking about these darker shades of purple, still very prominent here just south of Conehatta, continuing to make its way closer and closer towards Newton, and honestly, probably just gracing by it. I don't think it's going to make kind of a beeline. It's kind of going more just southeast, kind of almost towards Bethel and Liberty. That's where we could expect to see that storm continue to move within the severe thunderstorm warning. But I will notice a lot of people in the comments seem to be in good spirits, tuning in and thankfully not reporting much damage like you guys were reporting earlier. Y'all do a fantastic job letting us know what these storms are producing, whether that's submitting it through the Mississippi Live weather app, letting us know in the comments. So yeah, everybody continues to be in good spirits, and that's exactly where we want y'all to be here as we're tracking out the severe thunderstorm warning. Now, one thing I also do want to check, our lightning. I haven't talked about that yet. And let's just see if it's trying to decrease. It's almost like it can't tell. I'm always covering it up here with my head, but it's kind of just lingering around 270. It built up to 280, almost 290. It did for a second before kind of starting almost its descent, but still sitting in the mid 80s, so, or at least 280s. So we're going to continue dealing with that here, and it is 817. So let's just see. We can recap kind of what's ongoing here with our latest SPC risk, which they have started to shave this out a little bit, which continues to be good news. So we're dealing with, and I'm not surprised why they kept that level 2 further out west. One thing our meteorologist Gabe Maynard was talking about earlier, where we're dealing with these showers and storms kind of in the northern portions of the Delta, they're going to continue to dig further and further southeast. This area you see highlighted in yellow, y'all have not received any storms or showers all day today pretty much, and that's because there's still a lot of energy and fuel, just an untapped atmosphere that these storms can act on in the western portion of our coverage area. Now further out east, and especially further north, we've already dealt with that today. So showers and storms really trying to push to severe weather limits, really going to struggle the further east you go, especially along Highway 45, where y'all have already gotten that round of storms. But they did keep that level 1 marginal risk for pretty much a majority of our viewing area. Level 2 out there for you guys out there in the Delta. And another thing that we want to continue emphasizing, we're not dealing with the tornado risk. I know you can see behind me these green boxes. That is actually a severe thunderstorm watch that is in place. We would have to look across the country to find a tornado risk that is ongoing for today. But what is driving this severe weather is the threat for hail, or excuse me, for wind. And that is what we've seen all day today. I mean, take a look at these blue icons. If we were to talk about hail, that would be these pink purple icons starting to show up. And you'll notice a lot more prominent further out west, and not the story for us here in North Mississippi. That continues to be a positive. And if we were to take a look at our hail risk, yeah, it's starting to blend in a little bit with our watches. Let's see if I can just take that off really quick. Yeah, there we go. We're dealing with that level 1 risk still further out west, and it was further up north earlier on today where they have received some hail. So again, great placement so far with the overall threat of severe weather, but we're not dealing with anything tornadic. These continue to be very wind driven, and that's what we're going to continue to monitor here heading into the rest of our evening overnight period ahead. So good to see those starting to kind of get shaved on out, at least the northern portion of our viewing area, northeast as well. You guys no longer under that severe weather risk, which means y'all can expect a much quieter overnight period. No reason to stay up too late and stress with us, but we'll keep you guys updated all night long if we have to, as we're dealing with these severe thunderstorm warnings pretty much down in the central portions of North Mississippi. So we can take a look. Again, it's very disorganized, and that's why I'd be curious to see kind of the overall intensity with this severe thunderstorm warning, because you'll notice it's following behind some more heavy showers built out ahead of it, and it's already eating up a lot of the fuel down here, which means this severe thunderstorm warning is continuing to push into an atmosphere that has already been tapped into some storms and showers out ahead of it. It's already using it all up. So that's a good thing, because we'll hopefully see that intensity, the severity just continue to decrease. Because this warning is set to expire around 9 o'clock. So we still have 40 minutes if they were not to pull that early. But I will say we're just kind of dealing with the threat for some wind, the potential for some hail, and we're not dealing with anything tornadic. And if we could take a look at our True Shield and Roofing hail threat, and there's two stories here. And this is something I want to pop kind of noticed. When we're talking about hail with the severe thunderstorm warning, we're really in the possible category here. So saying there is the potential for some hail to be falling, maybe pea-sized up to penny-sized. I know we had some reports sent in through the chat about penny-sized hail earlier on today, but that's been about it. If we're talking about the potential for more extreme, or I guess bigger-sized hailstones, we're going to start to see this probable, those darker shades of purple starting to pop on up. And that was due to a severe thunderstorm warning for you guys out there. I believe it was in Smith County, pretty much just north of the Raleigh community. Dealing with that earlier on today. Thankfully, that storm has pretty much lost its severe weather intensity, continued to drift on further and further southeast. And you can definitely tell it built up just northeast of you guys, stood still for quite a bit. And then once it started to kind of kick out that outflow boundary, start to become outflow dominant, is what our meteorologist Gabe Maynor says a lot, meaning it doesn't really have that energy being forced into the storm that it can feed off of. It started to weaken, and you can see it started to drift further and further southeast before really losing its head of steam and just not quite as intense as what it was. And we're not seeing any of those darker pixels popping up on this storm here. So nowhere near as intense of a hail core or the potential for hail that your neighbor saw pretty much just southwest of the Newton community in Newton County. So definitely wanting to keep you guys updated. Speaking of keeping you guys updated, somebody asking about Grenada, because I know it's a little bit hectic for you guys. That's what you were saying, kind of just a little bit heavy. So let's just zoom back up there for you guys. Again, we're not dealing with anything tornadic. If we're dealing with anything up here within our coverage area, it's just heavy, heavy rainfall. And we are not dealing with any severe thunderstorm warnings at this moment in time. You can see these just continuing to build and just bring some of that heavy rainfall. We can zoom in for you guys out there in Grenada. I know y'all were asking kind of what's going on. And it's a whole lot of that. We're talking about heavy rainfall. If we take a look at the potential for hail, again, a lightest shade of pink possible. It's really going to struggle with just how heavy this rain has been and how hot we've been lately. And we can take a look at our hail track. Yeah, I mean, Grenada County, really struggling to see it. If we were seeing anything, it's going to be pea-sized hail. By the time you get the camera out to try to take a picture of it, it's probably already gone. So that is always the best case scenario if we are talking about the potential for hail here in North Mississippi for Grenada County along I-55. I would say that our biggest threat associated with this is the heavy rainfall and maybe some gusty winds that's coming out. Let's take a look at our rainfall totals throughout the past 3 hours. Of course, it hasn't been raining that long. In fact, let's just do rainfall rate. I think that'll be a little bit better, especially with how slow these continue to move. And let's zoom in just a little bit tighter here towards Grenada. And you can see that bright spot, very evident here. Let's pixel that kind of just west of I-55, just south of Highway 7. And we're talking about 7 inches an hour out there in Grenada County. So I know that the weather might be freaking you out right now. It's just going to be heavy, heavy rainfall, maybe a few kind of gusts of wind. Hail is really going to continue to struggle, but at this moment in time, y'all are not dealing with anything severe. It's just a lot of much needed rainfall. And of course, that's going to help you feel a little bit better heading into the evenings. I know we'd rather experience cooler conditions earlier on during the day and not when we're winding up or winding down for our Wednesday evening, getting ready for our Thursday. But it is definitely still going to be a significant difference, as we were talking about upper 90s for you guys out there in the Delta before this rainfall moved in, at least during this current moment in time. So again, I hope that helps you feel a little bit better out there in Grenada County. It's just heavy, heavy rainfall. And we can see that here. Still using our Jackson radar side, I think it gives us the best visual as those continue to move very, very slowly here in North Mississippi. And we can go back towards our, oops, wrong one, rainfall rate. At least how much rainfall we've received. I mean, we can already see quite a bit. 2.2 inches just southwest of Grenada County. 2 inches. You're starting to see kind of those yellows pop up. That means we're crossing into the 2-inch category or greater. So dealing with a lot of heavy rainfall, and that's why that aerial flood advisory got issued earlier on this evening and why it's not set to expire until 10:45 for folks out there in Quitman, Tallahatchie, Coahoma, and I believe that's it. Let me make sure I'm not excluding anybody else, but it should just be Quitman, Coahoma, and Tallahatchie. Yes, so that's set to expire around 10:45 later on this evening, and of course still unfortunately very disruptive. We could take a look out here with our Clarksdale camera, which is how energetic these continue to be. It's not going to take long for us to see those lightning strikes, especially as this camera starts to load on in. 81 degrees feels like 86. Wind not quite as impactful as what it was. In fact, we're talking about 11 miles per hour, and we might start looking away from the storm as this was kind of set. Ooh, there we go. There's a flash warning for you guys, with just how heavy this rain continues to be. Let's see. Out here in Cleveland, again, we're just dealing. Take a look at this camera. It's starting to sway a little bit, so that wind is going to be a little bit higher up than that 0 miles per hour you can see. But 90 degrees still feels like 99. Why we were talking about you guys out there in Grenada enjoying this rainfall is it's going to help you guys feel a lot better and a little bit cooler once it moves on through. Of course, not wanting to deal with the severe weather capability and potential, but at least it's making you guys feel a little bit cooler in the process. So that's a positive. But 90 degrees feels like 99. We can see those showers and storms out there in the distance, very disruptive, very energetic, and that can cause some power outages here. Greenwood might have another fantastic shot, which it looks like the camera did move slightly because I think it was looking kind of through the tower earlier. You can see the flashes of lightning. I'm covering it up behind me. There's a little bit brighter, so no matter where I was, y'all would have seen it. Unfortunately, the reporting station down, but I mean just constant flashes of lightning continue for you guys out there in Greenwood and out there in the distance. So I think the story tonight, especially as the sun continues to set, we're not dealing with sunshine or anything bright. We're going to see that lightning very, very evident. And we're going to continue just dealing with those light shows out in the distance or right on top as this heavy rainfall continues to move on through. I'd be curious to see which direction our forest camera is looking. I know you guys got a lot of rainfall earlier. Still kind of dealing with that. 73 degrees feels like 72, so there's a positive when we start talking about these rain chances and showers and storms moving on through. You actually feel a little bit cooler than the temperature outside. So that will be kind of the story heading into your evening, especially once these storm chances move on through. And I know we have some usuals out here in Atala County. You guys are sitting very nice dealing with dry conditions. 73 degrees feels like 68. Wind very calm for the most part, coming in around 9 miles per hour out of the south. So not too bad. Yeah.
Oh wait, is my mic?
Yeah, your mic's on.
It's on?
At least I can hear you through the IFB.
Okay, I can't hear it on my I guess batteries have died because it's been a long night of tracking. Well, they're talking about that storm in Newton County, off the top of my head.
Okay.
They're probably going to expire that because it has weakened substantially. So
that's great.
That'll be a positive to our coverage. We will, if they end up expiring that, we'll take it through the entirety of that warning.
Okay.
But if they end up expiring it early, then we may cut stream up until the 9 o'clock hour, so that way we can get some things ironed out here behind the scenes. But
Perfect.
Just a little update on what they're talking about.
Sounds great. That's always fantastic news to hear. So that was our meteorologist, Gabe Maynor, letting us know about this warning down here towards Newton. The lone warning we have here, and we can just continue looking at that one. Let me switch it off. Rainfall, which honestly, while we're talking about it, we might as well. Let's just switch back to reflectivity. And we're going to take a look at this warning, hopefully set to expire a little bit earlier, because at this moment in time, it's set to expire at around 9 o'clock. And that's still another 30 minutes. And what they have been talking about behind the scenes and within the National Weather Service office, that they're not really seeing this kind of maintain its intensity. And I could agree with that. I mean, you could see those brighter returns here around 8:16. That's where we transition from that initial warning towards the second one. And notice how it just kind of loses it as it continues to make its way further and southeast. And what did we say when we started talking about this warning? There's a lot of heavy rainfall out in front of it. That's already ate up a bunch of energy. And now the warning really not to feed off of, meaning we are not dealing with any severe thunderstorm warnings here within Mississippi, and that continues to be a positive. So we're going to wrap this up here to get ready for the 9 o'clock, because I know a lot of you guys are wondering whether or not we're still going to see some showers and storms throughout the evening, overnight time period. So y'all make sure to stay updated with us. The best way to do so is with the Mississippi Live Weather app. Scan the QR codes, and of course, tune in later tonight at 9 o'clock. Water gets you ready for the 9 o'clock hour and what the rest of your overnight period has in store. So I hope you'll stay with us here at Mississippi Live.
Every legend starts somewhere.
Not with perfection, but with the decision.
The decision to show up, work harder, and believe this place can change everything.
At Northeast, you're more than just a number.
We're built on opportunity, and our students are willing to rise to the occasion.
Here, success isn't handed to you. It's earned.
You don't just leave with a degree, you leave as a legend.